Okay, Mr. Mayor, the meeting is live on YouTube, so you can begin.
Good evening, members and those watching on the YouTube live stream. Before I begin this meeting, I would like to introduce members to Canon Ian Black, who will be saying prayers this evening.
Good evening, members. Begin with a prayer of hope at this time of pandemic. The God of hope and consolation in times of anxiety, may we be drawn by your hope, not driven by fear. In sickness and in health, may we find your song of praise to lift our heads in thanksgiving and joy. When times are hard, inspire us with your generous love to be mindful of the needs of all people. In isolation and physical distance, help us to reach out to others with words of encouragement and companionship. Bless all whose work ensures our common well-being, that together we may travel through this veil of misery to the bright dawn of your new tomorrow, which is always much greater than the past. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. And with the Brexit negotiations reaching a final stage, whatever that means, we pray for our nation, and a prayer that was issued by the Church of England a few years ago around this issue. God of hope, in these times of change, unite our nation and guide our leaders with your wisdom. Give us courage to overcome our fears and help us to build a future in which all may prosper and share. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. And we pray finally for our city. God of life and love, we pray for our city. Grant us peace in our communities, honesty in our trading, hospitality and warmth in our welcoming, integrity in our planning and civic life, that the common good may prevail and your kingdom of righteousness and justice be affirmed. We ask this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome everyone to this meeting of Full Council. I will now hand over to Rachel, Head of the Constitutional Service, to go through some housekeeping points of this meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Evening, members. In order for this virtual meeting to run smoothly, please keep your camera switched on at all times and keep your microphone muted, except when you're invited to speak through the Mayor, by myself or the monitoring officer. Any member wishing to speak during debate should indicate this by clicking the blue raised hand function in the participant's screen. When I invite you to speak, please unmute your microphone, make your comment, and then mute yourself again. If we run into technical problems, the meeting may be adjourned while we address this. If your connection fails during the meeting and you are unable to reconnect, one of the DEM service team will contact you. I would remind members that all virtual meetings are recorded. As we are meeting virtually, it is important that members adhere to the rules of debate, so it is clear to the public what is happening. Through the Mayor, the monitoring officer and myself will be enforcing these rules strictly this evening and ask that members behave in a respectful manner. Finally, we aim to take a break around 7:30 p.m. this evening for about 10 minutes, and as such, we should finish the meeting at around 10 past 9. Before I move to the first item, the Democratic and Constitutional Service Manager, Pippa, will take a roll call. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. So members, when I call your name, if you could please turn your microphone on and confirm that you're present for me. Thank you. So Councillor Aitken.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Ali.
Present.
Councillor Allen.
In attendance.
Councillor Ash.
Yep.
Councillor Ayres,
Present.
Councillor Barkham,
Present.
Councillor Bashir,
Present.
Councillor Bisbee is here. He's just on another call at the moment, I've been told, so he will be in attendance shortly. Councillor Bond, Andrew Bond.
Yep, here.
Thank you. Councillor Sandra Bond.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Present.
Councillor Burbidge.
Present.
Councillor Casey.
Present.
Councillor Seresti.
Present.
Councillor Coles.
Present.
Councillor Day.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Dowson.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Ellis.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Fitzgerald. Councillor Farouk, sorry.
Present.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Yes, I'm here, Pippa, thank you.
Councillor Fowler.
Present.
Councillor John Fox.
Yep, present.
Councillor Judy Fox.
Present.
Councillor Harper.
Present.
Councillor Haynes.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Hemraj.
Present.
Councillor Hiller.
Present.
Yes, I'm here, Pippa.
Thank you. Councillor Hogg.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Holditch. You're just on mute, Councillor.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Howard.
Present.
Councillor Howell.
Present.
Councillor Hussain.
Present.
Councillor Amjad Iqbal. Sorry, could you say that again, Councillor Iqbal? Yep, thank you. Councillor Azhar Iqbal.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Jamil.
Present.
Councillor Jones.
Present.
Councillor Joseph.
Present. Thank you, Pippa.
Thank you. Councillor Lamb. Councillor Lamb.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Lane.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Lillis.
Yep, here, Pippa.
Thank you. Councillor Murphy.
Present.
Councillor Nadeem.
Yes, I'm here.
Councillor Gul Nawaz.
Present.
Councillor Shaz Nawaz.
Present.
Councillor Over.
Present.
Councillor Quyan. Is Councillor Quyan here yet? No, I believe she is going to be a few minutes late. Councillor Robinson.
Present.
Councillor Rush.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Sanford.
Here.
Councillor Seaton.
Present. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Shahid.
Present, Pippa, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Simons.
Yes, present.
Councillor Skipstead.
Present.
Councillor Warren.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Walsh.
Yes, present.
Thank you. Councillor Wigan.
Present.
Councillor Yazin.
Thank you, Pippa.
Thank you. And finally, Councillor Yagatin.
Present. Thank you, Pippa.
Thank you very much. That's the roll call completed, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 1, apology for absent. Are there any apology for absent?
Mr. Mayor, I have apologies from Councillor Goodwin. There are no other apologies.
Thank you. Agenda item 2, declaration of interest. I will hand over to monitoring officer to run through a declaration of interest.
Members, I have granted a general dispensation for all members should they have any pecuniary interest that enables them to debate and vote on the budget item later on the agenda tonight. Any member who is more than 2 months in arrears with their council tax must declare this now, as this will affect your right to vote on the budget item. Are there any declarations of interest from members this evening which are not already recorded separately on their individual register of interests?
Councillor Fowler. Oh, sorry, Fiona.
Yeah,
Councillor Fowler.
yeah, it's just the one about the motions. Obviously, I work for All Mail and I'm a member of the Communication Workers Union, etc. So,
Thank you, Councillor Fowler.
Councillor Murphy.
Yes, declare interest. I'm a long-standing member of Labour Animal Welfare Society and other animal society organisations, which is pertinent to the debates on cruel sports and the fireworks and animal cruelty. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy.
Thank you. Agenda item 3, minutes of the meeting held on the 21st October 2020. I would like to move approval of the meeting of the council meeting held on the 21st October 2020.
A pleasure in seconding, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. We are now going to try the voting system. So I will hand over to Pippa to run the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, we're now going to vote on whether to agree the minutes as a true and accurate record as set out in pages 3 to 40 of the agenda pack. This is just to make sure we're all familiar with the voting process on Zoom. So just to run through, to vote, you will need to press the appropriate button on your screen, for, against, or abstain, and then press the submit button. If you do not see any of these options, please raise your virtual hand and we'll address that. So Dan, if you could run the vote, please. Okay, members, so the vote is now live. If you could place your votes. Okay, members, we're just waiting for a few more votes to come in.
That was a lot easier, Pippa.
Good, good. Is anyone having any issues? We've still got about 4 members left to place their votes. I've got 2 members left to place their vote. If you're having an issue, oh, Councillor Murphy, are you having a problem?
No, I just wanted to make a remark. Would people please not interrupt? Would they put their hands up? Thank you.
Okay, well, if no one else is having any issues, we will close the vote now. Thank you, Dan. All right, so the results of that vote are in. So it's 54 for approval of the minutes, 0 against and 1 abstaining. So the minutes are agreed. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Agenda item 4 and item 5, Mayor's announcement and Leader's announcement. I have no announcement this evening. However, Councillor Holdridge, I understand you have an announcement to make. You have 5 minutes to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to put on record, it's been my privilege to work with officers and staff guiding us through this very difficult year. Long hours and sometimes 7 days a week, many doing different jobs. There's been laughs and there've been tears, but we have some very tired people. Never complaining, not only working just for the city, but across the wider area. I hope the council will join with me in recording our thanks to them for whatever part they have played in keeping us safe and this city moving. Coupled with that, two of our many hundreds, thank you, I'll try it again. Coupled with that, our many hundreds of volunteers have walked across all walks of life the city needed in their hour of need. Our volunteers in many roles have not only assisted the council, but also across the city with their needs and not seen just a volume since wartime. And the council salutes you. The council says thank you and compliments of the season to everyone. So I move that, Mr. Mayor.
Group leader, you may respond if you wish for up to 1 minute. Councillor Shaznawaz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I echo the words of Councillor Holdish. Our officers, including all the work that's been done with the community hub, is commendable. And our officers always go above and beyond the call of duty in any case, but right now, and since the start of the pandemic, have been extremely brilliant. But I'd also like to extend my thanks to the NHS, staff at care homes, other agencies, key workers, teachers, staff at Royal Mail, bus drivers, taxi drivers, the list goes on. But it's been remarkable to see how people have come together. I also want to take this opportunity, Mr. Mayor, to thank the Labour Group for all that they've done in terms of supporting the food bank on a weekly basis, giving food to homeless and rough sleepers, free school meals, reading books during the Christmas campaign. And I've also seen other councillors do some fantastic work. And I know it's not been easy for all of us. Many of us have lost loved ones and will never ever be able to fill that gap. But we have to continue because we have a duty to the city. I also know that Councillor Farouk isn't well and he's tested positive for the virus, and I want to pass the best wishes of the Labour Group, and we hope he has a speedy recovery. And I'll also take the opportunity to wish everybody season's greetings and a happy new year. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Sandford.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to endorse all that the leader has said. I think, when the coronavirus crisis is over, I think there's going to have to be a major public inquiry because a number of errors have been made, particularly at the national level, about how the crisis was handled. But I think we can be really proud of what has been done here in Peterborough, both from the point of view of all of our actual officers, from the chief executive down through the organisation. We can also be proud of our health services. But I think we just need to bear in mind it's not actually over. We now move into trying to get the population vaccinated, and that's going to be the biggest logistical exercise in peacetime that the country's ever seen. And I think we need to counter the anti-vaccination propaganda that's being put around, because it's really crucial that as many people as possible, get the COVID vaccine when they call for it. So I hope the council can use all of its communications arms to actually try and get the message across that people must be vaccinated to keep us keep us all safe.
Thank you, Councillor Sandford. Councillor Lane, next.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and well said, Councillor Sanford. And all those before him. Warrington First Councillors would like to welcome the chance that everyone has to enjoy as traditional a Christmas as possible under the current circumstances, of course. We welcome the advent of our Christmas bubbles, but please, no matter how we celebrate, be careful in all we do. Let's enjoy the festive season with our loved ones, but remember to stay safe at all times. Merry Christmas from John, Judy and Steve. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. Councillor Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd echo and give my support to the comments that my colleagues have already made. 2020 has been a year like no other, and I'm sure we'll all be glad to see the back of it. I would like to extend limitless thanks to our frontline workers and my deepest sympathy to everyone who's lost a loved one over the course of this year. I would also like to pay tribute to our community leaders and our communities for pulling together to support one another during this challenging time. It just goes to show that we are a caring community, and when push comes to shove, we're there for one another. I'd also like to pass heartfelt thanks to our fellow councillors, to Gillian Beasley and all the council officers for their incredible response to the pandemic. Some positives have come from this situation, from pop-up cycle lanes to greater interest in the natural world around us. But I've been so impressed by the council's COVID-19 hub and the dedication of council staff that has ensured that residents of Peterborough have had access to the support that they've needed this year. Thank you and best wishes of the season.
Thank you. Agenda item 6, question with notice by members of the public. There have been no questions submitted by members of the public this evening, so we will move on to agenda item 7. Agenda item 7, petitions. There are no petitions this evening from the public. Are there any petitions from members?
No hands raised, Mr. Mayor.
No, thank you. Page 41. Rachel will now open the debate.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Shaznawaz, would you like to move the recommendations?
I would indeed. Thank you very much, Rachel and Mr. Mayor. As most members may know, that many of members have expressed concern over a number of months in terms of the amount of time available for us to debate motions. And at a previous group leaders meeting, we had a detailed conversation with officers to try and find an appropriate solution. And it's not always easy to find a solution to this particular challenge, especially when meetings are being held virtually. However, one of the proposals discussed was to potentially temporarily change the way in which questions are asked and answered by cabinet members and other members. And the specific proposal tonight is that the answers to questions from members are answered in writing only, with the question and answers report made public online for everybody to see, so that we still have that public transparency that everybody obviously appreciates and wants to see happening. What this will do, I believe, is save us anywhere between 30 to 45 minutes. And we can then spend that time debating other council business, and specifically, I hope, being able to debate some of the motions coming later on. And I want to stress and make it very clear that this change is only for one meeting, which is this meeting tonight, and that's it. And no one's trying to shut down democracy or reduce public transparency or accountability. Quite the opposite. We're trying to make time to debate motions, very important motions, may I add, and that's why I stress this is a one-off test. And there's a motion later on, which I'm tabling, to ask for more council meetings so that we can get through council business effectively throughout the year. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I request that we move directly to the vote after my proposal has been seconded, so that we can save time and go through the agenda as effectively and efficiently as possible. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Hogg, you have your hand raised. You're on mute, Councillor Hogg.
Sorry, I'd like to speak if that would be okay.
No, we haven't seconded the motion yet. Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
I wish to second.
Councillor Holditch, will you second the recommendations and say anything you wish on the proposal, please?
Yes, I wish to second it. You know, it is an experiment at this point in time. I know people want extra council meetings and that, but the chief executive has said quite clearly that she doesn't have the staff to have extra council meetings at the moment, and you actually need to put have it costed, and you need to next meeting we shall be discussing the diary for the year, and it needs to be costed and put extra meetings put into that diary, in my view. But I'm happy to second what we're doing tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I note Councillor Shaznawaz's request to move straight to the vote, and I'm happy to agree to this in these circumstances. I do not feel that further debate is needed, and moving directly to the vote will allow more time to debate other council businesses, which is the intention of the proposal.
Councillor Hogg, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I'd like to raise a point of order that I find that this is an astonishing, once again, we find ourselves in a position where councillors' sort of toolbox of being able to call the executive to account is being taken from us. We're in this bizarre situation where rather than members of the public coming to us and asking us as their councillor to ask questions on their behalf, we're actually in the position where, as councillors, we now need to go to members of the public and ask them to ask questions on our behalf, because we are not allowed to do so. This is completely and utterly ridiculous. It's being dressed up as being a temporary measure, and yet we are looking at a change in the policy. If it was a temporary matter, then the mayor could just have moved the item for questions to the bottom of the agenda, and that would have done the same thing, and it would have been a temporary resumption, taking away standing orders in order for us to do so. So, you know, we had the same thing with the 4 hours to 3 hours. That was supposed to be a temporary measure, and it's now permanent. Frankly, I don't believe that this is just a temporary measure. I believe that this is just another systematic reduction of our rights as councillors.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As indicated by the Mayor, we'll just now move to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Firstly, do members wish to move to the vote on this item? So if anyone wants to object, please can you raise your hand now? Okay, so Councillor Hogg has raised his hand, so we'll move to the vote. Again, so we're moving to the vote on whether to agree the amendment of the virtual meetings protocol in relation to questions set out in page 49 of the agenda, specifically for this meeting only. So to vote again, you will need to press the appropriate button for, against, or abstain. If you have any issues during this process, please raise your virtual hand. Dan, could you start the vote, please? Okay, the vote is now live. Okay, we have almost there. So we've got about 2 members who haven't voted yet. If you could just make sure we've got 1 member left. So just make sure if you want to vote that you have voted. Perfect. Okay, so that's everyone's voted. Dan, can you shut the vote down, please? Thank you. So the results are in, members. That's 45 in favour, 11 against, and 2 abstaining. So that has been agreed. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Agenda item 9A, B, C, and D, question or notice. This relates to question to the mayor, the leaders, and member of the cabinet, or the chair of any committee or subcommittee. There have been 6 questions submitted by members this evening, one of which is ward related as previously agreed. These will not be answered this evening, but have been circulated to the members and will be published online. Agenda item 10A, Cabinet Recommendation, Medium Term Financial Strategy 2021, 22, 23, 24, Phase 1. Agenda item 10A is in relation to the medium-term financial strategy. Information on this can be found in the agenda pack on page 43 within the budget book and in the additional information pack. Rachel will now open the debate.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members, please be reminded that as this is a budget debate, there will be no time limit on members' speeches for this item. Councillor Seaton, would you like to move the recommendations, please?
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. Fellow councillors, this is phase 1 of the 2021-22 medium-term financial strategy. It was launched for consultation on Friday, the 16th of October, and feedback from stakeholders is included in the appendices. It was subject to all-party scrutiny on the 11th of November. At that all-party meeting, questions were brought up on the following issues. Firstly, a request for benchmarking data showing performance. That was circulated following the meeting and covers 2019-20. Our unit costs are amongst the lowest of unitary councils. Brown bins. A set of slides have been provided to scrutiny members, setting out the composition of garden waste in the residual bin, the costs to deliver the garden waste service, the cost of landfill, and improvements that are being looked at. An amendment is being proposed tonight by Councillor Wiggin that we effectively scrap the charge. I presume after careful analysis and discussion by the councillor with Councillor Cheresti and officers. Remember, income from brown bins only covers the cost of that service. So I want to make 2 points. Firstly, we lose £1.2 million of income from that amendment. We incur capital costs of 0.8 million and may see reduced home composting. If garden waste in black bins reduced to previous levels, gating costs could reduce by £400,000, plus some much smaller benefits from less fly tipping and better recycling. So the cost of Councillor Wiggin's proposal tonight would be £800,000 annually, plus capital costs. Let's be clear, that is money that would have to be found from cuts to services, with no suggestion as to how that would be achieved. Secondly, when the brown bin charge was introduced, the case was strongly made that many people composted or did not have a garden. This charge encouraged the former, as we have seen from the large number of composters distributed. On the latter, Councillor Wiggin may be interested to know that only 1 in 4 homes in our ward of Hampton have a brown bin. His amendment would therefore ask 75% of Hampton residents to effectively fund a service they do not use. It doesn't balance a budget, but may look good on an election leaflet. Thirdly, a paper was provided to scrutiny members setting out the arrogant costs that they'd asked about. That includes allowances for the purchase of vehicles, many of which are nearing the end of their useful life, so the council can undertake its work more effectively. And lastly, scrutiny asked about lighting, and officers are currently in the process of developing a number of options to allow the council to realise the proposed saving. But we anticipate that a good proportion of the value will be achieved as a result of a recent reduction in the council's corporate energy tariff. Once these options have been evaluated, we'll be in a position to share more specific details with members. I want to remind members of the context for this budget. Last March, we agreed a balanced budget for this financial year and had a projected budget gap in 2021-22 of £14 million. We had draft savings plans for almost 12 million and time to address the final £2 million gap through a radical restructuring. We were confident we could do that and achieve sustainability. Circumstances for all councils then changed. All councils have been significantly affected by the pandemic. For many, it exposed immediate non-COVID related serious budget problems this year, such as at Croydon and Nottingham. It's believed that 80% of councils will have challenges in setting a budget next year. The pandemic has long-term implications for council finances. Government support so far has been substantial. This year, our pandemic costs are 88% funded. Extra funding for next year was announced in the Chancellor's autumn statement. And our challenge is next year. Our original projected gap of £2 million has risen to £36 million. That is based upon assumptions that show a continued lower level of commercial income, problems with collecting council tax and business rates, continuing costs to meet COVID-related activity, increased COVID-related demand, and challenges in delivering our transformation work. Let's be clear, the situation is entirely due to the pandemic. We are a well-run council, as was set out by our external auditor at Cabinet and Audit Committee meetings on the 16th November. However, we do have specific factors that are a challenge. One of the fastest growing cities in the UK that has invested capital in schools and infrastructure to enable that. No large reserves. Perhaps some think we should have, but it's never been our way to have taxpayers' money sitting in the bank. We have the 8th lowest council tax amongst unitary councils, and 65% of homes in the lowest 2 tax bands. Good for residents, but a challenge when funding services. And as I mentioned earlier, we have low unit costs, nearly 12% below average, and that's pretty well across the board. We make every pound work for our residents. Year on year, this council has successfully set a balanced budget. We've never been afraid to seek advice and challenge from external sources. We've consistently set ourselves a target of being efficient and innovative, whilst ensuring services continue to meet the demands of our residents. However, the unique situation caused by the pandemic, the greatest challenge of our lifetimes, has meant that we have entered formal talks with MHCLG to allow them to fully understand our financial position in detail and to give this city the support it needs and can justify, fully justify. The provisional settlement will provide significant extra government funding, and whilst we're grateful for that, it will not be sufficient to close our budget gap next year or for future years. We have a structural funding deficit requiring longer-term solutions. So moving swiftly to discussions with MHCLG was clearly the right thing to do, stating our case for funding as we support our communities through the tough times caused by the pandemic. We have 4 simple goals: to ensure our COVID-related costs are funded, to seek ongoing fairer funding that reflects the growth of our city, establish reserves that can deal with any future shocks and support our transformation work, and ensure, this is really important, ensure we can meet our aspirations to build back better and set the basis for strong local economic recovery. I want to touch on 2 final points. Firstly, why, if the financial settlement will be known shortly, are we progressing phase 1? Simply because we still need to contribute to balancing the budget. We know the earlier we agree actions, the earlier we can deliver them. Secondly, I know councillors will want to know progress on our discussions with MHCLG. They're moving rapidly, and we've already supplied a significant amount of information that supports our position. This will be independently validated with a report delivered to MHCLG before Christmas. Shortly after that, we expect to hear about additional support in its form, although this will need to be formally confirmed by ministers. As I've committed, I will keep councillors advised of progress. I'm therefore pleased to recommend this budget to council, and thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Seaton. Councillor Soresso, will you second the recommendations and either speak now or reserve your right to speak later in the debate?
Yes, thank you. I will second the recommendation and reserve my right to speak later.
Thank you. Councillor Wiggin, I understand that you would like to move an amendment to the recommendation as set out in the additional information pack. Please could you do so now?
Thank you very much. Yes, I would like to move the amendment in my name to this recommendation. I think Councillor Seaton has quite thoroughly explained what it is in his introduction. I note with interest some of the points Councillor Seaton made in his remarks, including saying that the council is very well run. So it may be well run in terms of the way things are administered and the way the books have been balanced. But in terms of the vision for the city and the way we want to be, I think quite a lot of people would disagree with that assertion. One thing in particular that is shocking and that we have covered in great depth at Growth, Environment and Resources Scrutiny Committee is the recycling rates of this city. And one of the reasons I'm moving this recommendation to abolish the charges on the brown bin is that we need to be doing everything we possibly can to be pushing our recycling rates and contributing to the vision that this administration agreed to push when it declared a climate emergency. So I'm interested to note as well in the PowerPoint presentation that was shared how many steps are required to get our recycling rate back to a reasonable position. We are below national averages, and I wonder why those things haven't been done in the 20 years this administration and its predecessor members have been running the council. I also note more generally on this plan, it's not really a budget that we're discussing tonight. It's more of a statement of where we're at. It's saying we've got a massive budget deficit, as Councillor Seaton explained, and this is how much money we would like the government to give us for Christmas because we've been good this year. That's how it reads to me. And the answer the Cabinet have provided themselves is 2.5 million, which takes it down to 35 million. I would love it if the government gave us all of that money, and I think we all would. But what are the chances of that happening? It's unlikely. I think there's more chance of Councillor Seaton recommending that I go on Santa's good list this year. We discussed, so I moved this recommendation at the joint scrutiny. We've got an answer. I'd like to go into more detail on some of that because I think there's more work that needs to be done, and I hope we can get to that. But as we discussed in the joint scrutiny, the vision for many of the day-to-day services of the council, like recycling, which underpin a lot of the work we want to do on climate emergency, just isn't there. And until that is the case, this council may be in audit terms a well-run council, but I don't share its vision, and we need to change that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wiggin. Councillor Sanford, will you second the amendment and either speak now or reserve your right to speak later in debate?
Yes, I'd like to second the amendment and I'd like to reserve the right to speak, please.
Thank you, Councillor Sanford. Okay, can I call on any of the speakers on either the original recommendation or the amendment, please? Can you raise your blue hand? Councillor Fitzgerald, please.
Oh, you caught me slightly unawares. I won't be supporting Councillor Wiggins' amendment because it's nonsensical, as usual. And I'm going to be quite firm about it. Councillor Wiggin, you have done no work whatsoever to justify your recommendation. It's spectacularly irresponsible of you to come here tonight and suggest that we, David Seaton quote the figures, but in round terms, when you put in, take out this, that, and the other, it's an £800,000 difference. And what you're trying to do in terms of, we all want to drive up recycling rates, won't do this. And you want to inflict the cost of a service on everybody. So I'm going to make sure that residents in Hampton Vale know exactly where you stand in terms of increasing the cost to them on a weekly or annual basis, because you don't give a jot about Hampton Vale. You're an opportunist electioneering here with this. It's not about brown bins and green energy. If you cared that much about Hampton Vale, you wouldn't have moved out of Hampton Vale the moment you got elected, which cheated the public in terms of from where you lived then and where you live now. So look, the fact of the matter is you have done no homework whatsoever. And the fact is that you have made no attempt to speak to Councillor Chereste. I'm sure he will nod and tell me whether you've spoke to him. I know for a fact that you've not spoke to any officers whatsoever about the implications, about the whys and wherefore of how the waste system works in the city. You have no idea what it costs in terms of gate fees. You have no idea what it costs to treat the amount of waste in black bins or that goes into the recycling centre. No idea the financials whatsoever. You're just banging on for electioneering purposes, thinking that you can save somebody money and increase recycling rates. Well, sorry, it just doesn't wash at all. Anything you're suggesting, come back and do the research. But let me put this challenge to you. Agree this tonight, but we, the Conservatives, will guarantee to completely scrap the brown bin charge if you can mitigate the costs entirely, increase recycling rates, and make it a good idea for everybody. Now go away, speak to the officers concerned, get their input, tell them what you're trying to achieve, and ask them, is it possible? Don't come here tonight with half-baked ideas that have no substance whatsoever, and that's why I won't support your amendment. I agree with its sentiment. We want to drive up recycling, but you've not done your homework, not at all. And none of us will support it on that basis. And I hope opposition colleagues can see that this is electioneering. This is serious money, folks, and it's putting at jeopardy the council's financial position over a piece of electioneering nonsense tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hogg, please.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. So Councillor Fitzgerald talks about irresponsibility. Councillor Seaton talks about not wanting residents' money being kept in bank accounts and being used. And that's probably why he has dwindled away £40 million worth of reserves over a period of time, which was slowly put together by previous administrations. So if you want irresponsibility, I would suggest that is where you will find irresponsibility, spending residents' money, basically balancing the books. I see that David Seaton wants to, do you want to come in there, David, and point of explanation maybe? No? Okay, fine. This motion isn't saying...
Yeah, point of accuracy, Mr.
Councillor Seaton.
You're on mute, David.
You're on mute, Councillor Seaton.
Sorry, Rachel, I'm having some screen problems.
That's okay.
It's a point of accuracy. Councillor Hogg says that we've dwindled away 40 million of reserves. I would suggest he looks back at what the reserves have been in the past. He might find that they were a lot lower in previous years. We actually built them up to allow us to have a cushion for the challenges we've currently got.
He makes the numbers up.
So he's just so far wrong. You could not believe it. He clearly has not looked back even 2 or 3 years ago.
Councillor Hogg, do you wish to continue?
Yes, please. Yes. Regarding this amendment isn't saying scrap this this as an idea for a cost saving. What it's saying is that the and I'm not a member of the group, the Joint Scrutiny Budget Group or the Joint Scrutiny Group, has asked some very telling questions about, we need some more information on this. And Councillor Wiggins basically saying, can we just hold back on this? We're not saying take it away. We're just saying hold back on it while those questions are answered, so that the Joint Scrutiny Committee can scrutinise the executive and make sure that this measure is in fact the cost saving that they said it is. Similar to the fact that they said that they were only going to spend £2.5 million doing up the town hall to let it out, and it's now well over £8 million that they've spent on it, and it still isn't finished. So forgive us if we want to scrutinise your figures and make sure that the cost savings that you say are going to come forward actually come forward.
Point of accuracy, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Seaton.
We have spent £5 million doing up the town hall, but we have rented it out to 2 long-term tenants, bringing in an income far in excess of the cost of that £5 million of capital spend. We do need to ensure that when we say things, they're accurate.
Point of accuracy, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Seaton, as usual, is exaggerating and talking nonsense. If he actually looks at the town hall, half of the town hall is actually empty because they haven't finished refurbishing it. One half of it costs £3 million to refurbish. The other half costs £5 million, and it's not even completed.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Day, please.
Hello there. I just wanted to say that I was made aware of Caroline Lucas's MP's early day motion, which called on the government to provide councils with an extra 8.7 billion to local authorities. Some of that which would be looked at spent on environmental measures. I know in my ward that many of my residents use the brown bin service, and actually at a recent meeting, residents asked for better brown bin collections, a better service. I just wanted to say that we as Greens don't think that the government spending review was adequate enough in supporting our councils financially, particularly during this pandemic. And without much needed funding, we know that our services will face further cuts, or our residents will have to plug the funding gap in the form of council tax. That seems what may well likely happen, which is difficult and disappointing. And the early day motion that Caroline Lucas puts forward, she's a very accurate person, we all are in the Greens, and she said that prior to the COVID outbreak, councils were already dealing with a 15 billion reduction to core government funding since 2010 and a 49.1% real terms reduction between 2010-11 and 2017-18, according to the National Audit Office. So I think, as well as some mismanagement, actually the austerity measures have really impacted us, and we need to really make sure that central government support us here now. And if they don't, we know it's residents that are going to be paying for that out of their own pockets. And I just really wanted to make that point.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Joseph, please.
Thank you. Our colleagues in the administration would have us believe that but for COVID-19, everything was rosy in the garden. However, that simply is not true. They perhaps have vision of a different garden to the rest of us. At the budget meeting, as Councillor Seaton said, the predicted gap was 14 million. Back then, there was no pandemic, just years of mismanagement and posturing. One of the favourite excuses previously was that it was all down to the previous administration. But let's look at that particular statement. This administration has actually been in here for 20 years. And as an average administration is approximately 4 to 5 years, they were the previous administration and the previous administration before that, and before that, and before that. So maybe there is some truth in their statement. Cuts, cuts and cuts and more cuts ran through their previous budget, although they like to claim that they were restructuring, refinancing. There weren't actually cuts, but in fact, there were cuts to services such as citizens' advice and the young offenders programme, cuts that affect those services that were already struggling. This is the true face of this administration's supposed financial prudence. In the last 20 years, what have they done to alleviate the housing crisis? Currently, it takes around 8 to 9 months to actually get on the housing list to get your application approved. And there are still 3,000 people waiting on the housing list, a number which seems to remain surprisingly static considering all that they are doing to alleviate that particular problem. Labour councillors have for years been asking for the reintroduction of the Housing Revenue Fund to assist with the ability to build and buy more social housing and help to relieve the crisis across our city. Affordable homes, which should have been at 30% of any development, and apparently we were told by Councillor Hillier in the summer that this was in fact the truth, but when you speak to officers, the financial directors, they say that it's actually more like 15%. Why is it that we're failing to achieve these targets? Is it because by insisting on them, we would make the sale of land, the asset of land, less attractive to developers, and we would have less money then to shore up the mismanagement gaps within their budget? We're told that we have no vision because we questioned the need to purchase the TK Maxx building. We were told explicitly when we asked the question that in fact all of the office space at St Martin House was already rented out and to people. But in fact, having asked that question 24 hours previously to the financial director and then asking him again afterwards, and indeed having an email from him only today to confirm the fact that there is plenty of space available at St Martin House. They've not managed to secure somebody to rent it. So why perhaps couldn't we have used that space more wisely? Is it the fact that the vision of this particular administration cannot stretch 400 yards to include St Martin House as part of the city centre? And that therefore, what will happen when we have a university there and a bridge over the Nene? Surely that will be part of the city centre, and that money and expertise could have been used better there. The simple fact is that things are not rosy in this garden at all. Promised investment has not gone ahead. Millfield is just one example where the 7.5 million promised to them in 2015 still has not been spent because apparently no one's come up with any ideas. And yet at a public meeting, which we held a couple of weeks ago, officers showed us plans that had been drawn up years ago and not been implemented because this administration simply does not want to invest in certain areas of the city. Hard-working officers in the council have been extremely successful in bidding for funding for new towns projects and other funding, while the administration sells off the asset and depletes the reserves. This administration boasts of its fiscal prudence, and yet here we are on the brink of bankruptcy, and not just because of COVID. That's just another one of their excuses. Yes, COVID has indeed been an awful pandemic and has affected every council across the city, across the country, but it's not the only excuse, and they must now face up to the fact that it's through their own mismanagement of funding, the choosing vanity projects over homes for our residents, and failing to invest in neglected areas of our city that has brought this council to where it is, and they cannot simply say that it is because of COVID. Child poverty in East Anglia in Peterborough is in the highest in East Anglia, and our schools continue to languish at the bottom of the league tables. Services are cut and the city is neglected. This is the legacy of this administration, and for that reason, we will not support their budget.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hemraj, please.
Hi, it's not about the budget. I just wanted to point out that at the start of the meeting, members was asked to be respectful to each other. Can I just remind members to be respectful and kind to each other and not be rude? I think Councillor Fitzgerald really does owe Councillor Wiggins apologies to his comments to him. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Holditch, please.
Sorry, I lost the screen. I just wanted to point out, and I'm sure Councillor Allen would agree, there is no delay in the waiting list. Yes, there was. That was due to people on maternity leave and sickness and a shortage of staff. The staff have been recruited and went back. There is no delay in putting people on the waiting list now. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Holditch. Councillor Sanford.
Thank you. Yes, I would like to second the amendment that my colleague Councillor Chris Wiggin is putting forward, but also make some comments on the budget. Now, the reason for the amendment, we're not saying the brown bin charge should be abolished. What we're saying is there should be a full cost benefit and an analysis of it and of actually increasing it. Now, what we've seen is a few slides showing what the current cost is. We actually need a much more fundamental approach. The actual figures that Harrigan have produced show that only 20% of households currently have brown bins, whereas before the brown bin charge was brought in, the vast majority of houses had a brown bin. So where is all of this garden waste going to, and what is the cost implications of it? Now, we know that the brown bin charge is deterring people from sending their garden waste to composting, but we also know, and we need to look at the wider context, that we're failing to meet our own recycling and composting targets. What are those targets? We are pledged, and we pledged 12 years ago, to get recycling to 65% by 2020. We're now in 2020 and we're still at 45%. We're still at 40%, which is less than the rate that we were when this administration came to power 20 years ago. So we need a change of course, and increasing the brown bin charge is only going to make the situation worse. We need a complete rethink, and this amendment gives us time to actually have a rethink. Now, turning to the more general points, I'm actually surprised Councillor Seaton has actually got the barefaced cheek to bring this so-called budget to full council in the first place. Just look at the actual headlines. It's a budget which proposes that the council has a deficit of £35 million in the next financial year. Far from closing the budget
Point of accuracy, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Seaton.
We have two phases to our budget. This is phase one, and we bring another phase. As Councillor Sanford knows, he has been on this council for years and years and years, in March, which sets the eventual budget for next year. He knows full well that only a week or two ago, there was a further settlement from Chancellor of the Exchequer, which gave us further funding for next year. So he knows that statement is absolute nonsense. Let's get back to accuracy.
Let's get back to accuracy. They started off with a budget gap next year of £14 million. It's now £35 million. The government, yes, has given us about £11 million in the Chancellor's statement, but that still leaves us with a significant budget gap. Normally in phase one of the budget, you close the budget gap. This administration has actually increased it. Now, we know that the COVID pandemic has had a big impact on the budget, and it has on the budgets of councils across the country. We know that this Conservative government has systematically underfunded councils over a considerable period. They've cut our support grant, and at the same time have denied us the ability to increase our taxes to pay for maintenance of services. And then at the beginning of the COVID crisis, they said they'd give councils all the money that they needed, and then proceeded to renege on that promise. So we know that this Conservative council has been let down by a Conservative government and has been hit further by the COVID crisis. So we now have a council projecting a deficit next year of maybe it's only £24 million and not 35, but a council that has run down its reserves, and a council whose external auditors have just submitted an opinion on the council accounts, which says there is material doubt as to whether the council remains a going concern. COVID has had a big impact, but the overspending and running down of council reserves has been going on for several years, and the figures in the budget report show that quite clearly. Now, Councillor Seaton said at the budget scrutiny meeting that he's hoping that the government is going to come to the rescue and solve our problems. Now, he said there's no need for any contingency planning because the government will solve the problem. Now, that may happen. There may be a lot of socially distanced arm twisting going on. The government may decide they don't want the embarrassment of seeing councils all over the country going bankrupt. They may do that, but it's not certain that they will. So to be honest, I can't believe that our cabinet and our officers are sitting back and just hoping that the government is going to come and solve all the problems. The structural non-COVID problems that have let our council finances get into this precarious state are going to continue. We need a fundamentally different approach. Now, turning back to management of waste, what is a fundamentally different approach? It's actually trying to increase our recycling rates as our policy says that we ought to. It means investment in more curbside sorting to actually give us high quality recyclables that we can sell. That would be good for our finances and good for the environment. We should not have spent £80 million on building a waste incinerator, and we shouldn't be compounding that by proposing to spend another 40 or 50 million trying to transmit heat from it all over Peterborough. We should be investing not in incinerators, but in clean, green renewables such as wind or in solar. Now, at the budget scrutiny meeting, we asked for further information on the additional £1.5 million that the Aragon contractor is receiving. Now, we've now been told that half of that money is the revenue impacts of them investing over £10 million in a new fleet. Now, let's just ask a few questions on that. Are these new vehicles that they're purchasing going to enable greater curbside separation of waste to separate out more recyclables so we can actually increase our recycling rate and increase our income? But no, I've been told they are going to be electric vehicles, but they're going to be the same type of vehicle to collect commingled recycling. Now, why is that actually happening? We don't know. Why are we investing in all these additional refuse vehicles when we don't know what our budget position is going to be? What we also know is that sometime in the next 12 months or so, the government is going to produce its own waste and recycling proposals, which may put more requirements on the council to actually do more curbside sorting. So why are we investing in new refuse vehicles now when we don't even know what our future responsibilities are going to be? It sort of gives you an impression of administration that has run out of ideas and is beginning to lose the plot. Now, Councillor Hogg mentioned the town hall, and he was absolutely right. We were told it would cost £2 million to refurbish it, and it's now cost over £8 million, and over half of the town hall is still not completed. So might it not have been better to do what officers originally proposed some years ago and put the town hall up for sale? You know, that's something that needs to be fundamentally reappraised. What about education? We're told that Peterborough is going to have a university. We all support that. But now we're told it's going to be a university that's not going to have any accommodation. So all the benefits that other towns get from an influx of intelligent young people who would spend time in Peterborough setting up sporting and cultural facilities, who would then possibly remain here to boost our economy, we're not going to get any of that. So why are we having a university that is not really a proper university at all? And we've also seen recently, there's been a few headlines in the paper about what's happening at Kensington School, where £70,000 of our school capital budget is being built, is being spent on putting a fence around a piece of land which is supposed to safeguard children. But we're now told that the council's going to keep the gates in the fence open at all times. Now, that does not make any sense. So what other examples of really crazy spending are there in our council budget that we're not being told about? Now, I don't think we've ever seen a budget like this. It really looks as though we have an administration that has really lost the plot. Now, it's exactly 21 years to the day, on the 9th of December 1999, that the Conservatives took control of this council. So if our finances are in a predicament, then there is only one party that is responsible. And what is the point of this budget if it does nothing to solve those problems? Councillor Seaton may well do well to recall the words of Oliver Cromwell: "You have sat here for too long for any good that ye have done." So if there really is no point in this budget and no point in this administration, then maybe it really is time for them to stand aside. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sanford. Councillor Shaznawaz.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Councillor Joseph and Councillor Sanford have covered quite a bit of what I wanted to say. But I have a few points, and I'm sure Councillor Seaton would be delighted to hear that. Councillor Seaton talks about delivering a balanced budget in previous years, and he's right. We've done that. But back in March, members will recall the debacle we had running back and forth from the Mayor's Parlour trying to reach an agreement. And that was because it was a difficult budget to agree to. And that was pre-COVID, Councillor Seaton. And I think, Councillor Seaton, when you look back end of April, early May 2021, and look back at your time, I think one thing that, or I hope one thing that you would agree with, is that focusing on cuts and more cuts was possibly short-sighted, and there should have been a bigger focus on investing in the city. And when the hole is getting deeper and deeper, cuts don't allow us enough space to be able to make up for the gap, you have to invest your way out. And I know Councillor Cheresti is seconding this budget proposal. I'm sure he'll agree with his extensive business experience that when there's a big gap, you cut some places, but you also invest and try and get more income. And I know, Councillor Seaton, you're going to tell me we get somewhere around 80 to 85 million pounds in revenue, and that's fine. My point is we could have done more than that, and I'm sure you'll agree with that. A big concern that I have, and none of us can answer that question here today, is how many businesses are going to go bust and how many businesses are going to change the way that they work. And the point I'm trying to make is how much money are we going to lose as a council from business rates? That's a question, obviously, that's unanswered because we can look at as many different reports as we like. Reality will inevitably show a different picture. So that's a huge concern that I have at the back of my mind. And your statement, Councillor Seaton, about that the situation is entirely due to the pandemic. Honestly, David, sometimes honestly, I laugh and think, how do you keep a straight face when you say that? Honestly, I do. But you keep saying it, so fine. And I agree with you. We need to build back better, but we also need to have a focus on jobs.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Seaton.
Point of order. Yes, thank you. I believe a short while ago, a member of Councillor Nawaz's group, Councillor Hemraj, intervened and suggested that we all be respectful to each other. Could her group leader actually show that respect? Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, all I said was, I'm surprised how Councillor Seaton keeps a straight face when he says the situation is entirely due to the pandemic. That's not disrespectful, that's just a comment and observation. I've not said anything personal about him at all. In fact, I've never done that until sometimes when he starts talking about issues that are nothing to do with the council. Anyhow, I agree with you, Councillor Seaton, that we need to build back better, but we need to have a very clear focus on jobs, because that's how we're going to be able to take this city forward. And investments like investing in the city of culture is a fantastic idea. And I'll hopefully, I doubt I'll get any time to talk about that because by the time we get to those motions, I doubt we'll get past the second motion. But that was something I also put forward a couple of years ago, Councillor Seaton. You said, oh, this is not going to work. This is going to cost us £10 million. And yet, when I did a freedom of information request to Hull, they confirmed it cost them 700.
Point of information, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Seaton.
I'm sorry. There's just constant lie after lie here. I have never said how much a city of culture would cost. I've never said it, and I've never said it to Councillor Nawaz.
Okay, a figure of £10 million was mentioned, but anyhow, Councillor Seaton, I'm not going to sit and go through every single council meeting to try and find that. Other members who were here a couple of years ago will recall that. I'm also obviously pleased that we've got this innovation hub, which was again a Labour group idea. And I think it's fantastic because I'm exceptionally pleased to hear a couple of days ago from John Till about the university, and he said the top floor has been taken by a local business, a gentleman by the name of Paul Holt, who I know extremely well, and is business photocentric, a very forward-thinking, innovative business. And he said the other two floors will also be taken up very quickly, and there's a lot of interest from a number of blue chip businesses. Why am I surprised? Of course there'd be interest. It was a fantastic idea. I still think we need to push further on, obviously, digital transformation, because that's the way forward. And Councillor Seaton, we might disagree on a number of things, but I know you'll agree with me that going back 21 years from the date that Councillor Sanford shared earlier, that cutting and keeping council tax low in those going back 20 years, 19, 18, 17 years was a bad idea. That low base cost has come back to bite us very quickly. I know in those days you probably weren't here, but as we look back, we need to learn some lessons from that, so we don't do that going forward. And I think you're absolutely right, Councillor Sanford. The government's not going to allow a poorly run Tory council to fail. They can't afford to do that. That will make them look very bad. And then when an inquiry is conducted into the shortcomings, that I think that will show the party in not such good light. And I was also pleased to hear, in fact, because I think it's important to share positive stuff as well. When John Till shared that the university will have a focus on digital innovation, entrepreneurship, agri-tech, health, social care, the green technology and environment. And I think those 4 areas are fantastic. So all of the people who are working on the university, I think have got stuff right, to be fair to them. And I think that's fantastic, and we should commend that because that's the way forward. As a council, we should be focusing on the future. We should be looking at green technology. We should be looking at artificial intelligence, robotics, because that's where the world's heading. And we want to be seen as an innovative council, which is ahead of the game. A few more observations, Councillor Seaton, which I've shared with you previously at the joint budget scrutiny, but I'll just remind you again. When I read the MMTFS report, honestly, every time I read it, it sends a shiver down my spine. I just on page 7, it says, all that the council has exhausted all financial measures available. It's seeking a capital direction, deferring pension payments, minimum revenue provision payments. Page 8, again, the pressures anticipated to extend into 2020, 2021 and beyond means that council is going to basically struggle to submit and deliver a legal budget. Page number 10, you're talking about without additional funding, we're going to have catastrophic service cuts. I mean, that's scary stuff. And Councillor Sanford covered the issue about the council operating as a going concern. And then a couple of times there's mention of a section 114 notice here, which again is very concerning. Now I know partly, Councillor Seaton, because you're a smart cookie. I know partly you've probably done this just to kind of demonstrate to your government or the government that we're in a dire situation and that we need funding. And obviously, having read this report, it's going to send a shiver down their spine too. But really, you should have done this years ago, and you're the guy responsible or the person responsible, and you should have known better as a banker that you've got to give businesses an opportunity to invest and grow, and you should have used that same mindset for the council. So based on that and everything that Councillor Sanford said and Councillor Joseph said, I will be voting against this phase 1 recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I just remind councillors that it's time limited. Time is unlimited. However, speeches, you can only have 1 speech per member. Okay, thank you very much. So I have Councillor Murphy now, please.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, it's not a speech, it's a point of order. And the point of order is there are members who are interrupting and trying to make points of explanation without putting their hands up. I noticed Councillor Holditch, the last time he wanted to do that, he put his hand up, but Councillor Seaton has not put his hand up in several times. So can the Mayor let us know how does he want us to put forward points of order or points of explanation? And can those that are interrupting and breaking the rules please stop doing it, or otherwise the Mayor may have to remove them?
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Can we ensure that we raise our hands, please, for points of order? Thank you. Councillor Holditch, do you have a point of order?
I do indeed. Thank you very much. I better unmute myself. Yeah, I do indeed. Thank you for the opportunity. I just want to say, City of Culture, it's something that Labour Party came up with when we'd already had exploratory talks about it. Mayor Palmer said this is a good idea, and he set us up with a lot of people to discuss it with. The opinion that they came to, and there were people that have run City of Culture in Hull and other places, is that the city would have to raise at least 25 million. Not all from the council, but from businesses and all the rest of it. And their conclusion was the city was not big enough. And we weren't looking, you can't look at it the next one, you have to look at it 2 or 3 down the line. So you're looking at 8 to 12 years away. And also, I was with the Mr. Watkins, the professor in charge of ARU, and I said to him, are you sure that we don't need any housing for these students? He said, you won't need housing for these students for another 3 to 4 years. And we do know that planning applications have been put in for private enterprise to provide the housing for these students. So, you know, these are all things in the air. And I have to say, while I've got the floor, I think it's a bit much that everybody's talking about budgets beyond and begone when they've not even contributed to them and refused to contribute them. We know if we don't get the money where those cuts will have to come. At this current time, until we know how much money we're going to get, there's no point in introducing them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sanford, do you have a point, please?
Yeah, I just want to raise a point of order because I think that you may have actually misled council by advising us of something that's not correct, because my understanding what the virtual meeting protocol says is that if members do want to raise a point of accuracy or a point of order, that they just actually intervene. I don't think it says that they should have to put their own hand up.
Mr. Mayor, if I can just clarify that, yes, the virtual meeting protocol states that you should bring any points of order to the attention of the mayor by turning on your microphone and indicating that you wish to move a point of order or personal explanation, and the mayor will then invite the member to raise their point. You do need to say what your point is and why.
Thank you, Fiona. Councillor Shaz Nawaz, do you have a point?
Yeah, I do. As a point of information, really, because when this was discussed, Councillor Holditch, a couple of years ago, you did not stand up at the time and say this would cost £25 million. So maybe that figure is accurate and true, but you've not shared that with us before. The only figure I recall was 10 million. However, the way that you're making it out today, that this is a very difficult task, I'm surprised you've allowed one of your councillors to put forward a motion on similar lines, but we'll talk about that later if we get down to it.
Thank you. Councillor Coles.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I've been listening to a very interesting input from colleagues from other parties about this budget. A couple of points I'd like to make, which seems to have been ignored. We're in an absolutely extraordinary period at the moment. Some 8 out of 10 councils across the country face technical risk of bankruptcy because of the pressures of adult social care costs. 131 out of England's 151 upper tier councils will exceed the levels of the available financial reserves and the support that's been provided by central government. So to say that this budget is in some way different to what's going on across the country, I'm afraid it's just not true. These are absolutely unbelievable times that we face. I'm particularly disappointed about the lack of consideration about what Peterborough is. It's the 4th quickest growing, largest growing population in the country. And over the last 15 years, that has been fairly consistent. So we have had to catch up with growth in demand, growth in population, enormous growth in need for housing and for schooling. And we've done a remarkably good job considering, but we are facing a particularly difficult situation right the way across the country now, where we don't have as much central government support as we used to have. That's true. We also have very little business rates coming in because of the pandemic. We have significant pressures that are building up that have to be paid for, that are not coming in because of business rates and so on. We have to be absolutely realistic about what we're trying to achieve here. It's all very well to criticise this particular administration. However, I've sat on the budget working group where we were hoping that all parties would work together so that we could come up with some really good answers to some of the difficult
Point
problems.
of accuracy.
Councillor Day.
Yeah, point of accuracy. And Councillor Coles, with all respect, mentioned that you were hoping for all parties to work together on the cross-party budget working group. Councillor Howell and I are very keen and have always said we would be happy to work on that group and have done in the past. We haven't actually, though, as the Green Party, been invited to any of those meetings this year since before COVID, since March. So just wanted to say that we haven't been invited, although we're very happy to be at those meetings. That's not true that there's been an invitation for us to comment on this budget before the joint scrutiny budget. I didn't see the budget until it got sent round, which was quite disappointing. So I just wanted to make that point.
I'm very grateful for your intervention, actually, Councillor Day. Thank you. Because yes, I'm equally disappointed that the other parties decided that it was somehow some sort of method that the Conservative administration were trying to somehow gerrymander or fiddle the books. And I got very disappointed that other parties wouldn't contribute, because we have got some good ideas around. I would love to have been able to debate them and to put them before the full council.
Could I raise a point of accuracy, Mr. Mayor? How can we attend members of meetings of a budget working group if the meetings aren't actually happening? You know, I can actually go to meetings if they're happening, but if the meetings aren't happening, I can't attend them.
Again, I'm very grateful for your intervention, Councillor Sanford. If your party would like to come to them and commit to the process, I'm sure we'd be delighted to do that. I think it's very important that we do, because no one person is a font of all knowledge, and we need to draw information from everybody. I just find it very interesting that we have what would appear to be early electioneering going on in virtually everything that we're saying. But let's be clear about what the situation is. Completely unprecedented circumstances we face. COVID has been an extraordinary attack on our society and on our ability to afford to do the things that we want to do. Despite that, we've been trying to put together a budget that works as far as it can. And I appreciate there is a big hole in the budget. We all see that. But then let's look at what happened in Croydon, for example, where they now are bankrupt because of the issues around the budget. Let's be realistic about what we can achieve. Let's work very hard, as I know officers and cabinet members are doing, to try to get more central government support to recognise the particular issues that we have. And can we please try just to focus on the reality that the whole country is facing, and not regard that Peterborough is in any way different to any other large authority in the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. I have no more hands raised. Therefore, Councillor Seresto, would you like to exercise your right to speak, please?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I would love to. I'm not really sure where to start, considering we've had a lesson in history. History is one of my favourite subjects, and of course, one of the few advantages of being as old as I am, I probably was there when some of it was being made. And so I can rectify, I hope, some of the misconceptions and some of the lies that have been spoken by certain members this evening. Or perhaps they weren't lies, they just didn't have the right information. I wouldn't want to say they were telling lies. But, you know, I was in the council chamber in 1999 when the opposition, well, when the administration, Labour administration, their leader stood up in the council chamber and said, we're not going to do this anymore because we haven't got any money, so you take over. And they may not have been the exact words, but it's pretty close to what was said. And that's when the Conservative Council, Conservative administration took over. And I can assure you...
Sorry, Councillor Seresto. Councillor Ellis, have you got a point?
point of accuracy, I was also at that council meeting back in 1999. We did not get the backing from the other groups, the Liberal group at that time. So we did not form an administration in 1999. It was nothing to do with just giving up, as you say. But we did not form an administration. We did not have a backing of other opposition groups, and that's why the Conservatives took office in 1999.
I suggest that when somebody has the time, they check the minutes of that particular meeting. And of course, when we did take over as administration, the reserves were appalling. And in fact, we were advised by the auditors that one of the first priorities was to build up the reserves that we had, because it would have been untenable to continue running the local authority with those financial parameters, which we did. And I have to say that we carried on doing extremely well. And then suddenly we had, of course, we had a Labour government until well into 2010, was it, whatever. And of course, what did they do? They mismanaged the entire British economy, the entire UK economy, and managed to throw away more money than I will ever be able to imagine. And then what happened? We, all of us, every one of you, every one of our citizens, every one of our electors paid for it and have been paying for it. And it's a matter of fact that the Conservative group, and it wouldn't have mattered whether it had been a Labour group or a Liberal group in administration, we've all had our budget cut to blazes, absolutely cut to blazes. Millions and millions and millions and millions of pounds taken from our budget, from government. And yet we've managed to keep this city going. The Conservative administration, remember, has managed to keep this going, this city going and growing at the same time. 220 million pounds a year we spent, 220 million pounds, not a year, but in total we spent 220 million pounds just on new schools. We now don't have a school that we can't be proud of. We have got some of the best primary schools in the country. Some of our primary schools are considered the best in the region. And that was all under a Conservative administration. Remember, over 220 million pounds, and we continue to spend and invest in our schools and our education. The university is the next thing that is coming on. And we've been working for a university for years. The Conservative administration dug its heels in and said, we need to have a university. What have we got? We've got a university coming. And this nonsense about it's not going to be a proper university because we haven't got any accommodation. Oh, come on. 1 million businessmen in this city would provide the accommodation if they got half a chance. Why on earth wouldn't the local people provide accommodation for our students? I'd be at the head of the queue if I got an opportunity and if it wasn't counterproductive for me as a business and a politician. Come on, it's one of the best paying things there are is student accommodation. There's no issue about there not being enough accommodations for the children. They'll be there whenever you like. 20 million pounds spent on the city centre refurbishment, a Conservative administration. For the first time in the history of this city.
Sorry, Councillor Sereste. Councillor Day, do you have a point?
Yeah, with all due respect, Councillor Sereste, I'm not sure what you were talking about at the beginning of your talk about the Labour government. The Labour government saw a massive increase in funding for councils. I know because I was a teacher in the education department, the council was much larger than it is now and much more supported, was able to support schools more. And then I wondered what you were talking about. Were you talking about the banking crisis that was due to the banks, which the people had to pay out? Or are you talking about, I don't really, I don't understand why you're trying to blame, what you're trying to blame the fact that we're in austerity now on. It definitely wasn't it was definitely, there was a global banking crisis. I appreciate what you're saying, but I just wanted to kind of point that out. Thank you.
I think perhaps we shouldn't be going on in history, but the reality of it is that the Labour government was so badly mismanaged our country and our economics. that the whole thing collapsed, and in my opinion actually led to the banking crisis in this country. And the reason, and you're absolutely right, they did increase funding. The problem was they increased the funding that they couldn't afford. And the moment they lost the election and we had a Conservative government, we had one of the biggest deficits since the Second World War. So we had to make that up. And unfortunately, we are all paying, or have all paid, for what happened during a Labour administration. That is the explanation that I'm sorry I didn't put across properly. So we spent £20 million on the city centre. Why did we spend £20 million on the city centre? Because we wanted to improve, and we recognise that the city centre is the heart of a city. It's the cultural centre of the city. It is the place where we all like to meet and drink, which unfortunately we can't do at the moment very well. But we then took our city centre to be one of the places where nearly every major business in the country wanted to come and invest, have a shop, have a restaurant, have a coffee bar. And when you think, fortunately, we never found anything for Debenhams as things have turned out. But when you think that Debenhams would knock on the door on our council and got very, very, very irate on a number of occasions because we couldn't find them a site in the city. There wasn't anywhere that they could build themselves a shop, a department store in our city. And that was repeated by everybody. I was in one of the fairs that we as a city council participated in, and I was backed up against the wall by a young lady from Wagamama who wanted to know why she couldn't open Wagamama in our city, and she still had to wait 3 years until she found a site. We took the unemployment rate of our city. I remember a Conservative administration took the employment rate of our city from nearly 6.5% down to one of the lowest in the country, below 2%. For nearly 6 years, we were the fastest growing city in the country, and we're now still number 4. We specialised and built for several years during the recession social housing. Cross Keys led the charge. These numbers you can get for yourself. You know I'm not telling you a lie. So don't say we ignored the needs of our community. What did we do? What did we do about North Westgate? I mean, our present leader has done a deal about North Westgate. That's what you talk growth. What about North Minster? That's in the pot too. That's more growth. And that will be lots of social housing too. What about Vista, one of the best developments in the country, considered to be one of the lowest carbon developments in the entire country? 350, perhaps a few more homes, and we saved the football stadium for our people. That's investment. What about Riverside? 40 years that land had been abandoned. The Conservative group and the Conservative administration managed to get it funded, sorted, and now redeveloped, and it's nearly been completed. So don't say we haven't invested in this city. There hasn't been as much investment in the history of this city. This has all been done by a Conservative group and a Conservative administration. How many thousands of jobs have been created by the investment that we, a Conservative group, have put into this city? Thousands, not 1 or 200, but thousands. It's something that we can all be proud of. And if we are where we are today because we're facing the worst pandemic since the Spanish flu. Now, where would we be? Where would we be as a city if this Conservative government administration had said to its local people, no, we're not going to support you because we're going to save this money? Where would we be? If you think we're in a bad place now, you imagine where we would be if we hadn't supported those businesses, those people, those families who desperately need the Conservatives and all of you to help them in this hour of really serious need. I think Councillor Sanford wants to say something.
Yeah, I just want to raise a point of accuracy because I'm slightly puzzled by this saying that everything was perfect until the pandemic hit. Because if you look at page 24 of the budget book, council reserves at 31st of March 2018, £40.9 million. Council reserves at 31st of August 2021 is only £7 million, of which usable reserves is 1.4. So that wasn't caused by the pandemic.
I never once said that things were perfect. What I said was that we were running the city well, and these circumstances are very, very difficult. Now let's go beyond the present pandemic, which is a real problem. And we've got to remember that had we not been such a prudent city, where would our citizens be now? You criticised us for not putting council taxes up as high as we should have done during whatever period you thought we should be putting council taxes up. You just imagine if we'd have put council taxes up to where some of you wanted, many of the people who today are struggling would be in real trouble. So please don't criticise us for not putting council tax up. Actually, not putting council taxes up when they're not necessary is probably a good thing. And don't forget, in many circumstances, we couldn't have put them up even if we wanted to. So let's get that straight for a start. Now let's get back to recycling. You say we should be making people pay for the bins. That is grossly unfair. The brown bins. About 20% of our community now have brown bins. If we then say, well, you don't have to pay for it, the other 80% who don't have brown bins will have to pay their share. Now, you've seen enough evidence to demonstrate that that actually would cost us about £800,000 if we took away the cost of the brown bins. And you keep saying, or somebody keeps saying, and Councillor Wiggin keeps saying, well, what happens to this waste? It's going into the black bins. And that is absolutely true. Some of the waste is going into the black bins. And if you do an analysis of the black bins, about 27% of what goes into the black bins is now garden waste. And the cost of doing that is just under £80,000. So we get about 27% of the garden waste goes in the black bin. It costs us just under £80,000 to treat it and deal with it properly. Now, that's compared to over £1 million that we get from actually charging for the brown bins. Simple math, you're £1 million out of pocket or thereabouts. 800,000 if you want to be picky and take it right down to the last penny. But that's where we're at. That's a matter of fact. Did you know? And when you ask the question, where does the rest of the garden waste go? Had you realised that a lot of it is taken down to our HRC? And did you consider that we've actually sold, would you believe, something you should love, Councillor Sanford and Councillor Wiggin? We've sold 750 composters to local people to deal with their garden waste. 750. So, you know.
Point of order.
Go on.
Councillor Wiggin.
Thank you. Just a point of personal explanation. Yes, I did know that because we do our due diligence on the growth and Environment and Resources Scrutiny Committee, as Councillor Sereste well knows, because he comes to us and enlightens us with his passion for the subject. So I don't think what he's saying is fair to say that we don't know these things, because we do. I would be delighted to talk to him and others more about this, and to have the statistics that were presented to us put in a more manageable format that actually explains what's going on, rather than in very quickly put together council jargon, which is why I proposed the amendment to take the brown bin charge consideration out of this stage 1 and said to accept the findings of the outcome, put it in phase 2.
May I continue?
You may.
Thank you. Well, and then if you knew we'd sold 750 waste composters to our local people, then you would know that that's where a lot of the garden waste goes. If you say you've looked at the figures that were given to you at scrutiny, then you would know full well that only 20% of the garden waste is turning up in the black bins. You should know full well that a lot of the garden waste goes down to the HRC. So actually, you're just asking a question to ask a question to try and embarrass the administration. And you also know that less than 20% of our people in Hampton Vale actually have brown bins. So if you think I'm going to stand there and let you make the other 80% pay for the 20% who've got garden waste, that is not something that's going to happen very easily. So I'm sorry, you got it wrong. And if you wanted all this information, if you weren't happy with what was given to you at scrutiny, you should approach me directly, especially as you are one of my fellow ward members, and you have never done so. So I would put to the council, and I would put to our Conservative group not to support, and I would actually say it to the other members, because I think this motion is frivolous, not to support it. Not to support the amendment. It has no basis in reality. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
It's a personal explanation, Mr. Mayor, because Councillor Surresti's been having a go at Councillor Wiggin and having a go at me as well, because I'm seconding the amendment. The question that he's got to ask, and I've put this question to him at a number of committee meetings, is what is he going to do about our abysmal recycling rate? The fact that we are 25 percentage points short of achieving our recycling and composting target. You know, that has an environmental cost, but it also has a financial cost. And it's not just about garden waste, it's also about all the plastic that could be sorted out, but is going in to feed his incineration plant.
May I answer that, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Right, okay. Well, we agree we need to do much better in the recycling, but neither is it fair for Councillor Wiggin to say that we're not even average, because actually our recycling rate in the average table, we're 30% ahead of the people at the bottom of the table, and we're only 20% behind the people at the very top. And if you take the top 10 out, we're only 5 or 6% behind the rest of them. So actually, whilst you want to paint it black and black and black, it's not. Now, I completely accept that we haven't got to the 60% recycling, and you also know that we want to buy new curbside, new lorries for collecting our waste. You also criticise us for thinking about buying electric vehicles and all the extra cost. Well, in the same breath, you said we've got no strategy and we don't know what we're looking at. Well, actually, we are looking at electric vehicles. We do want to buy electric vehicles, but as you very well know, because you already said so, that the government is about to change the rules. But we can't just sit there for another year and wait for the government to change the rules. We have to at least begin to plan where we want to go. Now, hopefully, we will have the government change the rules. We will then understand exactly what curbside recycling that they will require. And that's when we will start making firm plans for the future. And there was no way on earth we were going to go and buy all of the vehicles just like that. They would be done a little at a time to make sure that we got the right thing going. And as we need to replace the vehicles, we will do so.
Point of accuracy, Mr. Mayor, just on one small point that he's overlooking. 20 years ago, we were in the top 5 councils in the country for recycling. We are now in the bottom half. You know, something has to change, and he's not providing the change that we actually need.
Mr. Mayor, can I answer that as well, please?
Yes, you may.
We do have a plan to change. We intend to invest in more education. We hope to invest in our ward councillors so they'll help us get the message out to our citizens, because don't forget, our citizens are the people who put the waste in the bins. And there is something like 50% of the black bin could be recycled. and it's not being. And the question is why? Because it's not me that's not recycling the stuff in the black bin, and it's not you that's not recycling the stuff in the black bin, it's the public. Now, for some reason, maybe I accept that we haven't got the message across to them properly. We are obviously going to start a program of education through the schools, and we want to promote the whole idea of recycling much, much, much better. You're right. We need to, it's in our interest to get much better, much higher recycling rates.
So he's been running the council for 20 years and he's blaming the public for failures of his policies. I think that's a bit rich, Mr.
Well, I'm afraid you're again, you're twisting everything that everybody says to suit your view, aren't you? And we've been running the kind.
Councillor Shaz-Nawaz, do you have a point?
I do, Mr. Mayor. May I request we move to the vote, because at the start I put forward a proposal seconded by the leader that we obviously try and get through business as quickly as we can to get to the motions. At this rate, we're not going to get to the motions because we've got a break in between and then other items. So if we could move to the vote, Mr. Mayor, I'd very much appreciate it.
Councillor Seaton, would you like to sum up, please?
Councillor Nawaz, have you got a seconder for that?
Yes, please.
Seconded.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy.
Yes, I would like to sum up. Thank you.
Councillor Seaton, if you sum up, there'll be no other speakers apart from you. Thank you. And then we'll move to the vote.
My understanding is Councillor Teresti is now Councillor Teresti and myself. Councillor Teresti has just finished, so I'm the last speaker. Thank you. If I may, Mr. Mayor, I want to cover a whole range of things. I start by apologising to Councillor Murphy. He's right. Yes, I was interrupting on points of order and points of accuracy, and I'm grateful to the legal officer for just confirming that was the right approach. But apologies, Councillor Murphy, if that confused you. I want to touch on Councillor Day's point about the budget working group, because I think this is quite important. Yes, we had a cross-party budget working group, but clearly with the Liberal Democrats and Labour leaving it, it became a Conservative, 3 Independents and 2 Greens working group, which was less practical, but we have kept the briefings going for all groups over 2020. And I was interested in Councillor Sanford's point, which I've never come across before in this council. He said, I can't go to meetings if I'm not invited. But of course, he previously said, I don't want to be invited to the budget working group. I have no idea how that works. Councillor Joseph, I'm sorry, your speech was riddled with errors and misinformation. I'm just going to pick out a couple of points, because you said that we're always blaming the previous administration. I must admit, I could count the number of times I've said anything about the previous administration, Labour administration, on the fingers of one hand. And I've never blamed them, because that was, as Councillor Teresti said, 21 years ago when they pretty well bankrupted this council. So the 2 points I want to pick up are, one is Millfield, where you were complaining about the lack of investment in Millfield. And I sometimes wonder why we haven't been able to progress things there. And quite frankly, that is because the councillors, Labour councillors in that area, can never agree on what they actually want to do in the area. They never actually talk to officers about what they want to do. They've never talked to the cabinet member about what they want to do, never talked to the director about what they want to do.
Point of accuracy, Mr. Mayor. I'm afraid, Councillor Seaton, that's not true. I myself have had numerous occasions with a number of officers about investment in Millfield. Obviously, you've not been privy to those meetings, so I think to suggest we've not had those meetings is inaccurate.
So the director is wrong to say he's never had a conversation with you. The cabinet member is wrong to say he's never had a conversation with you about Millfield. Oh, okay. And Councillor Joseph said about the space at San Martin House that we can't let it out, as if that was a bad thing. So let's just step back. Why do we have space at San Martin House? Because we have introduced agile working across the council, and that agile working has meant we've been able to reduce the footprint, the property footprint of this council massively. And moving into San Martin House and continuing that work on agile working, we've managed to reduce it even further.
Councillor Joseph's making a point of order. Councillor Joseph.
If it's such a good idea, then why have you been trying to rent out this space since San Martin House was opened? And Councillor Farouk said in the last meeting, Councillor Seaton, that in fact all of the space had been rented out, and that is actually a gross inaccuracy, because as I've spoken to the Director of Finance, the space has not been rented out, and he is still trying to rent it out. So why is that? Why is it that he's trying to do that if that is not what is intended by this council?
Right, and I think this is where you're getting confused. Okay, when we first moved into San Martin House, we occupied all 3 floors. Through home working, agile working, challenging ourselves, we reduced it down to 2 floors, and we rented the top floor out to a building association. It's rented. We then challenged ourselves further, and COVID has made it clear that we can reduce our footprint further, and we have the opportunity to rent out a further floor, more people working at home. That has bedded in, it's working well, and to try and rent out further space in San Martin House. And that's what the director's talking about at the current time. Now, unfortunately, COVID hit. So, that's been a difficult project to manage through. But at the start, Councillor Joseph, you're saying, oh, the space was occupied. If you're in San Martin House, I remember when it was opened, your leader was there for the opening. All 3 floors were full. So I just want to then touch on a whole series of points that Councillor Sanford made. And it was interesting that both Councillor Sanford and Councillor Nawaz today have said that we should increase council tax. We should have increased council tax. Council tax for our residents should be much higher. They both said that.
Point of personal explanation, I didn't mention council tax in my entire speech, and I'll send him a copy of it if he wants.
I think you said you wanted to increase, we should have increased taxes. I think it was quite a clear point. I'm sure anyone listening to this, they can listen back and hear you say that. What you did say though, Councillor Sanford, was we, the Liberal Democrats, said we wanted to sell the town hall. Now, I remember that very clearly, because at the time you said we would get £100 million for it. And I actually went on the radio with one of your colleagues at the time who said we'd get £100 million for it, when it was worth about 3 million, an absolute fortune to sort all the problems out, the asbestos and all the other sorts of problems that were in the town hall. You also said we shouldn't have done the energy from waste facility. Well, presumably you wanted a landfill. You also said we've got 70 million in the capital budget for a fence at Ken Stimson. I think you might find that's 70,000. But another example of your confusion with numbers was the very selective use of our reserves figures. Now, we built up to 2017 a grant equalisation reserve to help us, because we knew there were reductions in government grant coming as we transformed the council. We would need a little bit in the bank to help with some of the changes that were on their way. But what was also in that 40 million figure, a large chunk of it, were departmental reserves that we had been given by government for specific items that you can't touch for your day-to-day revenue. You have to spend them on the specific items that the government's told you about. I said before, you've been on this council a long time, you know that. You also mentioned that the town hall costs started at 2 million and went up to, you gave a figure, and that was only for Town Hall South. Of course, since then we've had to do Town Hall North. Councillor Nawaz covered a series of points, and I think Councillor Seresti has covered a lot of that. I just want to touch on certain things. He said, I'm a smart cookie, and I should have responded to the problems years ago. So I should have responded to the problems caused by the pandemic years ago. Yeah, I would have really been a smart cookie if I'd done
Mr. Mayor,
that.
point of accuracy, come on, David. You know I wasn't referring to the pandemic, so let's stay on the brief, please.
Well, let me just step back. At the start of this year, as I said, we had just a £2 million gap in 21-22. So you're saying I should have addressed that £2 million gap years ago, because we were very close to a sustainable budget. But you said a number of interesting things. You said, oh, Councillor Seaton will talk about us having 85 million in income, but we should have more than that. So we're one of the best councils in the country for bringing in commercial income, but we should do far better than that. That's interesting. You said we haven't had a focus on investing, and Councillor Teresti covered a lot of that. But, you know, I was thinking 114 million pounds on schools, and we're not investing in the city. And that's just what we've put in, not what the government has put into our schools. That's our part of the deal. The university, not investing in our city. Fletton Keys, not investing in our city. No, Fletton Keys is ensuring that the passport office jobs stay in Peterborough. And the railway quarter, massive investment in our city, but we're not investing in our city. And you said we should have a focus on jobs, jobs, jobs. Anyone who wants to know how much of a focus on jobs, jobs, jobs we have in Peterborough as a Conservative group should just look at the question you asked me tonight, that you clearly didn't want to follow up on, and the answer I've given, which sets out in detail what we have done during this pandemic and are doing to help businesses and jobs in Peterborough. I think that's probably most of what I want to say, Mr. Mayor, but I should probably just touch on the amendment before we finish. I was interested when Councillor Wiggin said that ignoring the £0.8 million cost of scrapping the brown bin did not fit with his vision for our city. It didn't fit with the vision for our city. So we can ignore a 0.8 million cost that we might have to find from cutting social care, children's services, because we have a vision that isn't compatible with that.
Point of order.
Councillor Wiggin. Councillor Wiggin,
Sorry,
do you have a point?
Yeah, sorry, my connection went a bit funny then. Councillor Seaton knows full well that the recommendation I put to the budget scrutiny would not have cost the council any more money, because my recommendation was worded that I asked for a review and then to implement the cheaper option. So I think he is disingenuous in saying that by putting this through, I'm looking to make further cuts to services. So I'd ask him to withdraw his remark and apologise, please.
Right, I'm sure we can share with Councillor Wiggin the wording of his amendment, which I think was quite clear. But he wanted us to scrap the brown bin charge.
Point of accuracy, Mr. Mayor, that's not what it says. If you read wording, it's about deferring it into phase 2 to allow further consideration of the actual increase. And what I've been arguing is that should be in the context of a proper review of our approach to recycling. I think that's the key point, that Councillor Seaton's capable of actually accepting.
Yes, I mean that's a interesting interpretation, Councillor Sanford. Remove from phase 1 the proposed increase to the brown bin charge, defer the outcome, but review the cost of increasing the charge against potential savings from scrapping the charge altogether. So the inference here is Councillor Wiggin wants to scrap the charge altogether, and it has been explained to him, and I'm sure from his own discussions with Councillor Trusty and officers, he understands the implication of what he's putting forward there is £800,000 that would have to be found from cuts to social care, cuts to children's services, all these other areas. And he says the reason he's happy to accept an £800,000 cut is his vision. That was very clear.
Point of order.
Councillor Wiggin.
Point of personal explanation, which I think I might be repeating myself, but my recommendation to the joint scrutiny, which this amendment directly relates to, said to implement the outcome of a review, which, as Councillor Sanford says, is not fully complete because we've just been presented with some figures at short notice after I put in the amendment, and it was not to increase any spending. We believe that will make savings. If it doesn't, we'll accept. It was accepting the costs going up. At no point was there any mention of an increase in savings. So please, can Councillor Seaton stop repeating this lie?
I think you're getting quite confused, Councillor Wiggin. Yes, there would be savings, about £400,000 of savings, but scrapping the fee would cost 1.2 million. Now, my simple maths is 1.2 million less a saving of £400,000 equals an impact of £800,000. So you can take this to a review. You keep saying, I want to just take it to a review, but the maths are simple. If you want to scrap the charge, as your amendment says, it costs £800,000.
Point of order.
So I just want to, it's simple maths, Councillor Wiggin, it's not difficult. But if you want to tell the residents of Hampton Vale that 75%
point of order.
Councillor Seaton, Councillor Wiggin has a point of order. Councillor Wiggin.
A point of personal explanation and accuracy. Councillor Seaton is continually misleading this council with the contents of what I've asked for. Councillor Fitzgerald can shake his head all he likes, but it's true. my recommendation to the joint scrutiny was to review the cost of one option against another, my preferred option against Councillor Seaton and the Cabinet's preferred option, to look at which was cheaper and then implement the cheaper option. That is not costing the council any extra money or this magic 800,000 figure that he's saying I'm going to take out of other budgets. That's his estimate of what the difference is in the proposals. But my proposal is based on the recommendation to joint scrutiny, and it is not to outright scrap the charge, it's to look at all the options and then base it on the evidence of that. And therefore, can Councillor Seaton please stop repeating a lie?
I find it quite offensive that Councillor Wiggin should say I'm lying, when from his own mouth, he has just said, my preferred option. So Councillor Wiggin, we know your preferred option is to scrap the brown bin charge. And that has an impact of £800,000. That's not a lie. That is a fact. If you've talked to officers, you know that's the impact. You know it. It's simple maths. It's not rocket science. I want to just come to the end of this. I think Councillor Cole's...
Sorry, Councillor Seaton. Councillor Fitzgerald, you have your hand up.
I do, as my name was mentioned, because, you know, I can't sit here.
Yeah, what point is it?
It's a point of accuracy and a point of personal explanation, which goes back to my earlier comments. Councillor Wiggins does not know his brown bin from his black bin. He wouldn't know a bin if it hit him in the face. I'm sorry, Councillor Hemorrhage, if that's rude. You can't come to council and not know the facts. The facts are David Seaton is not making this stuff up. What you're asking for has already been determined by officers in terms of a review. I've got one here if you want all the numbers. What you're asking the council to review has already been reviewed by the officers, and had you bothered to speak to them, you would know this. What David is saying amounts to the outcome of what you're asking the council to do. And it comes down to this. It's £800,000, mate. Now, as I said earlier, go back to where I said, come back in March, whenever it is, with a proposal that suggests to take out the brown bin charge or scrap it altogether that makes sense. We'll all agree. Happy days. But today, you're talking nonsense.
Councillor Seaton.
I've just... Thank you, Rachel. Councillor Coles absolutely nailed it for me, because there were a number of people who just ignore the pandemic, or were saying Councillor Seaton's blaming it all on the pandemic. And I go back to that point that, you know, after the lean reviews at the start of this year, we had a £2 million gap. We now have a much bigger gap, and Councillor Noaz read things out from the report. Absolutely. The auditors said we're the most open and the external auditors said we're the most open and transparent council they've ever dealt with. And Councillor Noaz's response, oh, this is just for MHCLG. No, it's the way I operate, Councillor Noaz. Look through all the budget papers in the past. It is the way I operate. But when I listen to Councillor Noaz and Councillor Sanford, you know, I really do come down to the fact they have no ideas themselves. They have no solution. Frankly, they don't have a clue. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Pippa, can you run the vote, please?
Yes, thank you, Rachel. Councillor, so we are now moving to the vote on whether to accept the amendment to the MTFS as moved by Councillor Wiggin and set out in the additional information pack. As this is a budget vote, we'll do a recorded vote. So I'll read out each member's name in turn. And if you could confirm whether you are in favour, against or abstaining from the vote, please. So firstly, Councillor Aiken.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Ali.
Abstain.
Councillor Allen.
Against the amendment.
Councillor Ash.
Not voting. Abstain.
Abstain. Thank you. Councillor Ayres.
Against.
Against. Thank you. Councillor Barkham.
For.
4. Thank you. Councillor Bashir.
Against.
Against. Councillor Bisbee.
Against.
Councillor Andrew Bond.
For.
4. Councillor Sandra Bond.
For.
Councillor Brown.
Against.
Councillor Burbidge.
Against.
Councillor Casey.
Against.
Councillor Sureste.
Against.
Councillor Coles.
Against.
Councillor Day.
For.
4. Councillor Dowson. Councillor Dowson, how are you voting?
For.
4, thank you. Councillor Ellis.
Abstain.
Abstain, thank you. Councillor Farouk.
Against.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
I am definitely, most definitely against.
Thank you. Councillor Fowler.
Abstain.
Councillor John Fox.
Against.
Councillor Judy Fox.
Against.
Councillor Harper.
Against.
Against. Councillor Haynes.
Definitely, most definitely for.
4. Councillor Hemraj.
Abstaining.
Abstaining. Councillor Hiller.
Against.
Councillor Hogg.
For.
4. Councillor Holditch.
Against.
Councillor Howard.
Against.
Councillor Howell.
For.
Councillor Hussain.
Abstaining.
Abstaining. Councillor Amjad Iqbal.
Abstaining.
Thank you. Councillor Azhar Iqbal.
Against.
Councillor Jamil.
Abstain.
Councillor Jones. Sorry, was that abstain?
Abstain.
Abstain. Councillor Joseph.
Abstain, Pippa.
Thank you. Councillor Lamb.
Against.
Against. Councillor Lane.
Against.
Against. Councillor Lillis.
For.
4. Councillor Murphy.
Abstain.
Abstain. Councillor Nadeem.
Against.
Against. Councillor Gul Nawaz.
Against.
Councillor Shaz Nawaz.
Abstain.
Councillor Over.
Against.
Against. Councillor Kayam.
Abstain.
Abstain. Councillor Robinson.
Abstain.
Councillor Rush.
Against.
Councillor Sandford.
I'm for us starting to take our recycling targets more seriously.
Councillor Seaton. Councillor Seaton. Where are you? Are you there, Councillor Seaton?
He's gone to put the bin out.
It's all right, I'll wait for you. Yep, looks like you're unmuted. Councillor Seaton.
Sorry, Pippa, problems with the screen. I'm against. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Shahid.
For.
4. Councillor Simons.
Against.
Against. Councillor Skibstead.
Abstain.
Abstain. Councillor Warren.
Against.
Against. Councillor Walsh.
Against.
you. Councillor Wiggin.
For.
For Councillor Yazin.
Abstain, please, Pippa.
Thank you. And Councillor Jurgetine.
Abstain.
Abstain. Right. Can I just double check with the team? I have 12 in favour, 29 against and 17 abstaining. Is that right? Have you got that as well?
Okay, yes, that's correct.
Okay, fantastic. So members, that's 12 in favour, 29 against and 17 abstain. So the amendment falls. Okay. So members, we're now moving to the vote on the original Cabinet recommendation on the MTFS as moved by Councillor Seaton and set out on page 43 of the agenda pack. Again, I will read through everyone's names and if you could confirm which way you're voting.
Can I just ask, we've had a change of protocol in terms of the way we sign in so that our votes can be verified. Why are we going through this long-winded mechanism when it's going to be recorded by the system? Or are you saying that you don't trust the system for the third time in a row? Is that where we are?
This is a belt and braces approach, Councillor Hogg, and also to make sure that the public can see the vote as it happens. Right, Councillor Aiken.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Ali.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Allen.
For.
Councillor Ash. Councillor Ash, sorry, can you say that again?
No, against.
Against. Councillor Ayres. Councillor Ayres.
For.
For, thank you. Councillor Barkham. Councillor Barkham.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Bashir.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Bisbee.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Andrew Bond.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Sandra Bond.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Burbidge.
For.
Councillor Casey.
For.
Councillor Sureste.
For.
Councillor Coles.
For.
Councillor Day.
Against.
Councillor Dowson. Councillor Dowson.
Against.
Against, thank you. Councillor Ellis.
Against.
Councillor Farouk.
For.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Slight change of tack. Certainly for.
Councillor Fowler.
Against.
Councillor John Fox.
For.
Councillor Judy Fox.
For.
Councillor Harper.
For.
Councillor Haynes.
Against.
Councillor Hemorrhage.
Against.
Councillor Hiller.
For.
Councillor Hiller.
For.
4, thank you. Councillor Hogg.
Against.
Councillor Holditch.
For.
Councillor Howard.
For.
Councillor Howell.
Against.
Councillor Hussain.
Against.
Councillor Amjad Iqbal.
Against.
Councillor Azhar Iqbal.
For.
4, thank you. Councillor Jamil.
Against.
Councillor Jones.
Against.
Councillor Joseph.
Against, Pippa.
Councillor Lamb. 4. Councillor Lane.
For.
Councillor Lillis.
Against.
Councillor Murphy,
Against.
Councillor Nadeem,
For.
Councillor Gul Nawaz,
For.
Councillor Shaz Nawaz,
Sorry, against.
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 Yep. Councillor Over,
For.
Councillor Quayam,
Against.
Councillor Robinson,
Against.
Councillor Rush,
For.
Councillor Sandford,
Against.
Councillor Seaton,
For.
Councillor Shahid,
Against, please.
Councillor Simons,
For.
Councillor Skipstead,
Against.
Councillor Warren,
For.
Councillor Walsh,
For.
Councillor Wiggin,
Against.
against. Councillor Yazin,
Against, please, Pippa.
Councillor Yergatine.
Against.
Thank you. All right, team, can I just confirm I have 29 for and 29 against? Is that what you have?
Pippa, yes, that's what I have.
Yeah, correct.
So we have 29 in favour, 29 against. So, Mr. Mayor, it comes down to your casting vote. If you could let me know which way you would like to vote for your casting vote, please.
For.
For. Okay, so members, that is carried. Thank you.
Could we not recount Shaz Nawaz's vote again on basis on his first answer?
Mr. Mayor, it might be a good time to take a very short break now.
Yes, I think that would be a good idea. Yes.
Shall we, 5 minutes be enough, everybody?
No, we're going to have 10 minutes.
10 minutes, fine. So back at 20 to 9, everybody, please.
Fiona.
Judy.
Take a long while for people's kettles to boil, isn't it?
Mr. Mayor, would you like to start the meeting again?
Thank you. Agenda item 10B, licensing committee recommendation, statement of licensing policy and accumulative impact. Agenda item 10B is in relation to the statement of the licensing policy. Information on this can be found in the agenda pack on page 45. Rachel will now open the debate.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Hiller, would you like to move the recommendations, please?
Yes, Rachel, thank you. And thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Licensing Act 2003 Statement of Licensing Policy governs the way decisions are made by the Council on how it will administer its permitted functions under the Act. In accordance with statutory timeframes, the policy was subject to review and a consultation was carried out between the 19th of August and the 14th of October this year. On the 18th of November, the Cross-Party Licensing Committee convened, and following democratic process, I was elected chairman, and the cross-party members considered the revised policy and all responses to the consultation. Based on the responses and evidence received, the Licensing Committee determined two things: to modify the current cumulative impact policy so that it will only be applicable to new and variation applications which request sales alcohol as part of the authorised activities, and revise and republish the cumulative impact assessment in line with this decision. I now recommend to full council the adoption of the revised cumulative impact policy and the statement of licensing policy. I would ask that the unanimously agreed recommendations of the members of the Licensing Committee are carried forward by Council, and the redrafted cumulative impact policy and the statement of licensing policy are indeed adopted this evening, with introduction of the date of 7th of January next year. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, Councillor Hiller. Councillor Coles, will you second the recommendations and either speak now or reserve your right to speak later in debate?
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I second the recommendation and reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coles. Can I call on any other speakers, please? No? No hands raised? Councillor Coles, would you like to exercise your right to speak, please?
Thank you, Rachel. I suggest we go straight to the vote.
Agreed.
Members, okay, so if we're going to the vote, do members wish to go to the vote on the item? So if there's any objection, please could you raise your virtual hand now? Mr. Mayor, I'm seeing no hands raised, so we'll take that as agreed. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 11, question on executive decisions made since the last meeting. This is in relation to the record of executive decisions detailed on pages 77 to 82 of your agenda pack. Members may ask questions directly relating to each decision. Rachel will run through the process for this report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members, the leader will introduce this item and any questions will be answered by the leader unless he refers them to another member. I would remind councillors that they should ask questions on the decisions in the reports. All questions should be relevant to the decision itself. Excuse me. Should the Mayor feel that any preamble is unreasonably long, he may instruct councillors to ask their question immediately. Can members please note that once I have moved on, questions will not be accepted from previous pages. Councillor Holditch, would you please introduce the item?
Thank you, Mrs. Edwards. I'd like to remove the reception and adoption of this report, and I will refer any question to the Cabinet members concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holditch. I will take each page in turn, and could members please refer to the title or reference number of the decision when asking a question. So, page 77. Councillor Hogg.
Yeah, so my question refers to the replacing of the regional pool. I have to say I'm quite disappointed that the Conservatives are always talking about how we should have a vision for the city. This was not an opportunity to have a pool that was 50 metres long, like they have in Arundel. This is supposed to be a regional pool, not a city pool, but a regional pool. And the fact that it has removed the diving provision that we currently have at the current facility. So this isn't a replacement, this is a downgrade. And I just wanted to know what the feeling, why are we downgrading the facility that we've already got and not looking to upgrade it?
Do you want me to?
Councillor Holditch.
Right, yes, so I will transfer that to Councillor Allen, but you also know at the committee we set up a working group to look at just those sorts of things. So, but Councillor Allen, would you like to comment on that?
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Hogg. As the Leader has just stated, we set up a working group because there were concerns when this came to Cabinet that certain items needed more investigation. That would be the hydrotherapy pool, the diving, the length, and indeed even the perhaps the repurposing of the Lido. So these things will be considered further and viewed on community needs and on finance basis. I take your point. By the way, it's not Oundle with a 50-metre pool, it is indeed Corby. And the regional pool is a bit of a sort of red herring.
Point of explanation?
Pardon?
Oundle has got a 50-metre pool. It's had a 50-metre pool for decades. In fact, the current 50-metre pool in Oundle was replaced a 50-metre pool itself.
Thank you for, I stand corrected if that's the truth, and I look forward to you sending me evidence of that. But the notes that I have before me is that the nearest 50-metre pool is indeed the pool at Corby. But don't forget, we also have the Lido, which is 50 metres, and we're hoping to use that more as an all-year-round facility. So we're looking at all water in Peterborough, and I think the red herring is the regional pool element. We currently have a regional pool. We're now building a new pool. Whether it has the title regional pool, I'm not sure yet, because all is to be reviewed. And hey, what's in a name? What we're wanting is more water in Peterborough. We want to get the Wellington pool open. We want to get this facility open. So more water rather than one piece of water that's a bit longer.
Point of order.
Councillor Skibstead.
I was waiting to mention something about the pool, and it's on page 80, but that's just been mentioned now. So should I mention my point now or wait till you get to page 80, because we've already started talking about the pool?
No, can you wait for page 80, please? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, may I seek a point of clarification from Councillor Hogg, please? Just very, very quickly. One, I would like to ask, is it a public pool, Councillor Hogg? Be very interested. And two, did you actually read the consultant's report as to the questions you've asked? Because they're all in, the answers are all in that report.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. What is going on here? This is supposed to be questions to the Cabinet, not
clarification. That's all to a statement Councillor Hogg made. Clarification.
I have swum in a 50-metre pool in Oundle on numerous occasions. I've played water polo in it. I've done scuba diving in it.
Is it a public pool, Councillor Hogg?
It is open to the public, yes.
And did you read the consultant's report that many of your questions are already in that report?
I've not seen it, if I'm being honest.
I suggest you might read it before you put the questions.
So I'm not allowed to ask questions as to whether or not, I think it was a valid question, regardless.
And I hope, Councillor Hogg, that I've addressed it to your satisfaction. Councillor Fitzgerald was right to ask whether it's a public pool. My evidence is that the nearest public pool with a 50-metre length is Corby.
but I stand corrected if there's one that the public can have access to. Perhaps need some clarification at some stage in the future, though. Thank you so much.
Thank you, councillors. I'm now moving to page 78. 79. Councillor Kayam.
Thank you very much, Rachel. My question is in relation to the hydrotherapy element that has been referenced at point number 4 in relation to the regional pool. And my question is, please, is the hydrotherapy facility that is being alluded to within the report in replacement of the current hydrotherapy, St George's hydrotherapy pool that we have in Dogsthorpe, or is it in addition to? Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Councillor Kayam. The existing pool, it's our intention to maintain that as long as possible. But whilst we are scoping the opportunities for this new pool project, it's only fair and reasonable that we look at whether putting the hydrotherapy pool in that location would make sense financially. I understand the health benefits, and there is certainly an argument that it should be covered by the clinical commissioning group, by the public health, or whatever you want to call it, in the local area. I'm sure you'll know about that as a medical professional. And I do think the health-giving abilities that the hydrotherapy pool offers to the community and the specific user group should be investigated. And that's one of the reasons we are looking at the working group to look at these in depth and make sure we get it absolutely right when we launch this project fully. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sanford, please.
Yes, thank you. My question's also on replacing the regional pool, but more specifically paragraph 5 of the of what's in the minutes. It's quite clear from the number of questions we've had this evening that a number of councillors have got concerns about various aspects of this. So it's probably a good idea that the Cabinet has set up a working group, but why has it been decided that all of the members of the working group will be members of the Conservative group? Would it not have been better to have made this a cross-party working group?
Mr. Mayor, I'll answer that. The reason for that was that we had to do it. We had to get a working group, or it has to be approved by this council, and we wanted to do it quite quickly. So therefore, it was set up as a subcommittee of the Cabinet to look at it. So I think it's going to be chaired by Councillor Fitzgerald. If he wishes to invite others along, I'm sure he will.
Happy to chip in, Mr. Mayor, through you. Thanks, Councillor Holditch. We are an open administration. If anybody wants to make any comments or suggestions, whether it's about diving pools, whether it's about hydrotherapy pools, we're willing and able to listen to everybody. But I suggest, though, that you do read the report that accompanied the Cabinet paper from the consultants in leisure, which will in essence answer most of the questions why they drew those conclusions. And just as another point, another colleague tells me that the the pool in Oundle, it's for the local community in Oundle, it's closed to the public currently. Thank you very much, just to be accurate.
Thank you, councillors. Councillor Hogg, please.
Would that be because of COVID by any chance? I think it is generally open to the public. If I'm being honest, it has done for a number of decades.
No idea.
Are we on 79 now? I kind of missed the
we are on 79, Councillor Hogg.
That's fine. So my question is about the construction of the new school in the SEN school in Bretton. I was on the planning committee when this came to planning committee, and I was disappointed to find that this is a project by Peterborough City Council, and then it involves knocking down or cutting down 40 trees, and the local plan that we've all signed up for and decided is what we should be putting forward for all planning applications, that over 100 trees would need to be replanted to replace this. But we as a council have fallen have said basically we haven't got the money to do it, and that we're only going to replace like for like 40 for 40. And I just find that that how can we then stand up against developers who are doing the same thing and saying to them, you need to apply the rules that the local plan is saying. So I'd like to find out a little bit more as to why we as a council feel that we can make the rules but also break the rules.
Mr. Mayor, point of accuracy.
Councillor Ellis?
It's actually right. It's actually 102 trees which are going to be knocked down. Only 40 are being replaced. Therefore, it's a net loss of 62 trees. So I just want to add that to what Councillor Hogg has said. So it's actually.
Okay, well, we were told at planning committee it was 40 trees, but the 102 were needed to replace it because the local plan asked for a multiplier.
Can I ask Councillor Hiller to comment on that? Because Councillor Ayres is the education part of that thing, and not the planning explanation. So, Councillor Hiller, could you comment on that, please?
Yes, I can comment, Leader. It was a majority decision at the planning committee. The planning committee followed due process. The planning committee membership is party. Councillor Hogg may not have agreed with the decision that the other members arrived at, but it was a cross-party decision. There were Conservative members, there are Labour members that also agreed with the officer's proposal, and the decision was duly taken. It's a democratic process. You'll be, I hope, aware, Councillor Hogg, because it didn't go your way, it doesn't mean to say that it was wrong. So I think that's all I need to say on the subject, Leader. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Skibsted, please.
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, can I just come back on that? My question was not about the due process in the planning committee, but the fact that we as a council were putting forward a plan that does not apply to the local plan. Why are we putting in for an application one that we know is substandard? It's nothing to do with the planning committee and the planning committee's decision.
Mr. Mayor, I'm just going to interrupt for a moment now. Members, it's now 9 p.m. and in accordance with the virtual meetings protocol, the council meeting will end at 9:15 p.m. Does anybody wish to move a motion to suspend standing order 14.2 so that the meeting can be extended?
I would like to, but I know that it's not going to go my way. So,
Rachel, is there any hands?
Councillor Sanford has his hand up.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I think we told you this would happen, even by not having any questions. We still haven't got time to get on to some really important issues that are coming up later on. So I would like to propose that do I have to propose that the meeting be extended for a particular period or what?
You can just suspend it so there's no time limit on the meeting.
I would like to suspend the time limit then, because I do think there's some really important issues that we ought to be talking about.
Is there a seconder for that?
Yes,
motion?
Rachel, I'll second that.
Move
to the vote.
I'll hand over to Rachel.
Okay, members, in which case we are now moving to the vote on whether to agree to suspend standing orders and remove the time limit for the meeting. As normal, you'll need to select for, against, or abstain and then press submit. If you have any issues, please raise your virtual hand during the process. So Dan, could you please open the vote? Okay, so the vote is now live. Councillor Skibbs said, I assume that's just a legacy hand from your previous.
I didn't get to speak.
Yeah, no, that's fine, just to confirm that.
Are we voting in favour of 4 means it's extending the time, doesn't it?
Yes, so if you're in favour would be to suspend standing orders and extend the time of the meeting. Still got about 5, yeah, we're going down. A few members still waiting. just waiting for one more member. Okay, and now we're good. So Dan, could you close the vote, please? Thank you, members. So that is 426 against 31 and abstaining 1. So that motion falls. Thank you, Dan.
So Councillor Skipstead, I think.
Yep.
Back to you.
I had the same question as Councillor Sanford about the working party, the makeup of it. And I just noticed Councillor Fitzgerald's response was, oh, we can just come and ask a question. But is he saying that he won't invite other parties to join this group? Is that a definite no? Or is it?
I'm happy to answer. Sorry if I wasn't clear. Anybody, we will welcome any views or anybody, whether in writing or in person. We don't mind, from any party. It's not party political. We are trying to do the best for the city. So there are concerns, as Councillor Allen said and the leader said, about diving, about hydrotherapy. There are a number of concerns, but honest to God, people, read the consultant's report that accompanied the cabinet report. It may answer some of your questions. If you still have questions, come in person, put it in writing, doesn't really matter. We're happy to talk to all members because we should all try and do the best we can for the city.
I understand that. I was just saying the answer is you don't want a working party that's cross-party then.
No, because it's not a working party. It's a sub.
Well,
it's a
working party
well, okay. It's a poor choice of words. It's a subcommittee of cabinet. Okay, it's a subcommittee of cabinet, not a working party.
Okay, well, that probably needs changing then because it says working party.
If it's inaccurate, it's just an error. We know what we mean, but
I still think it would have been better to have had a.
Well, that's not the way the democracy works in the cabinet system, I'm afraid. No, I don't make those rules. That's the way it is, Councillor Skipstead.
Thank you.
Point of accuracy, that is total nonsense. The cabinet has the right to set up cross-party working groups if it wants to. So what you said is complete.
No. Again, you're misunderstanding the intention of my words. As Councillor Holditch said, in order to expedite this quickly, because the decision was taken at cabinet, it was felt it was the best thing to do it this way. Didn't say we couldn't do it another way.
Thank you. Councillor John Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I confess I haven't read the report, but I can assure you I will do now. And equally, would you let me know the date of the next meeting? Because I have concerns about the diving boards. We should be looking at replacing one for one, if you know what I mean, even better with the university, because we would want to be encouraging budding divers to use a nearby pool in their leisure time, so we get Olympic, divers in the future. And equally, I am concerned, obviously, about the hydrotherapy pool. I would love to see 2 or 1 big one in Peterborough. So please, would you let me know the date of that meeting?
Councillor Fox, sure, will do. I think we have one pencil. But can I just say, for the benefit of Councillor Hogg and others, I just want to give you some feeling as to why that we're doing this, because we feel that we want to reach the best we can, and we want to realize ambitions and dreams. We don't want to undersell it. You understand me? So we want to know as cabinet that we are actually doing everything we possibly can to make this a showpiece in the city and not undersell it. And Councillor Hogg, you made some reference about it, downgrading. Read the report first, but I can assure you the sentiment coming from this, both from Councillor Allen and others in the cabinet, is that we want to be ambitious. And I know the leader also is the same. He would tell you, if we're calling it a regional pool, let's make it a regional attraction. Now, I'm not saying that's what it's going to be called, but that's the sentiment behind why we're having this discussion. And please all contribute, because we want to hear what people think.
Councillor Allen, do you have a point?
Yes, I do. And as I was the portfolio holder who took this to cabinet, the reason we've ended up with a working group, or whatever we want to call it, is because I was listening to concerns around the cabinet table about the elements that are being addressed tonight. And I thought the fairest way was to take it forward for this working group. And we are happy to take reference from other members of the council. It's important that all views are heard. And if we're going for such a major project, which the city wants to be proud of in the future, we need to hear all elements. So fear not, we will take references. This working group has cabinet members, but we want to hear from everyone and get this right.
Can
Turn yourself off, John.
Did you say turn me off? No, we can all have grand ideas, but they do at the end of the day have to be affordable. And as Councillor Fitzgerald says, read the report, and it actually tells you that some of this stuff isn't commercially viable. But there we go. We're prepared to have a look at it. And if you've got anything to say, please say it.
Thank you. Councillor Joseph, please.
Thank you. Councillor Fitzgerald said that the reason why they set this up as a subcommittee of the cabinet was because, you know, it would speed things along. Can I ask what the urgency is? Is the pool about to fall down, or why is it that the urgency? This seems to be an excuse for.
I can tell you.
Why it couldn't be a cross-working group to look into these things. If you genuinely want to hear the views of others, why not invite some of them to sit on the panel and provide a more balanced view?
Councillor Joseph, there's no subterfuge here. Look, the decision was already taken in Cabinet. What this allows us to do, so it's moving forward. And on the advice of the Chief Executive, you've got to understand that, you know, we don't just do these things willy-nilly. The Chief Executive will confirm that if we delayed that decision in Cabinet, it would delay the ongoing, shall we say, project. So if we put in 3 months or 6 months delay while we all pontificated about it, it doesn't move on. So the reason why we're doing it quickly is because the decision was already taken in Cabinet, if you read the Cabinet papers. But it doesn't mean to say we couldn't go back to Cabinet and amend or slightly change what the recommendation was. So the project is now live, it's moving on. Any delay, it's not to exclude anybody, it's just the leader in the Cabinet said this was probably the sensible way to deal with it, the quickest way to deal with it, and there's nothing more than that. It's not anything else.
Thank you, councillors. I'm moving on to page 80. Councillor Hogg.
So my question is about the Aragon Direct Services taking on the trade waste for Peterborough City Council. We were told that when Aragon was first formed that part of its remit was to take on trade waste. And I just wondered, why has it taken so long for this decision to be made?
Marco?
There we go. I have to be completely honest. It's something that they've been looking at right from the beginning, but I think they just wanted to settle in and make sure they'd got the core business settled and right before they started expanding into trade. Simple as that, really.
That's true.
Thank you. I'm moving to page 81, members. And 82. Thank you. You can move to item 12, Mr. Mayor.
Agenda item 12, question on the Combined Authority decision made since the last meeting. This is in relation to the record of Combined Authority decision, detailed on pages 83 to 116 of your agenda pack. As per the virtual meeting protocol, question and answers in relation to this item are due to prior to the meeting. None have been received. Agenda item 13, motion on notice. Motion on notice can be found on pages 117 to 1122 of your agenda packs. Motion 1, motion from Councillor John Fox. This motion is in relation to cycleway. I will now hand over to Rachel to oversee the debate.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor John Fox, please would you like to move your motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, I will. You've read it, and I'll just add to it, please. Peterborough City Council and PECT in 2007 worked together to produce the Peterborough Green Grid Strategy, which covered this exact idea. So it's not my idea. This has been looked into in the past. I'm not taking credit for it. It's something that I believe in and I'm passionate about. This was the green, and they produced the Green Infrastructure and Biodiversity Supplementary Planning Document, which only mentions the word, sorry, I've lost my track. I'll rephrase that. They worked together to produce Peterborough's Green Grid Strategy, which covered this exact idea and looked into numerous ideas of linking up villages by safe cycle routes. This strategy was replaced on the 25th of July 2019 by the Peterborough Green Infrastructure and Biodiversity Supplementary Planning Document, which only mentions the word cycle 6 times, but nothing about any real positive news about cycling between villages or increasing cycle paths. This concerns me, as I believe PCC needs to have a vision for safe cycling within our rural areas, as the ROSPA statistics will clearly show that you are twice as likely to be killed while cycling in the rural area than our city centres. We need to promote cycling. We need to have a long-term vision for the future and strive to provide more safe cycle routes, such as the Green Wheel. I encourage you to support this motion for a feasibility study to take place, and hopefully, if successful, this will be the start of more ideas to come forward to make us a more forward planning council when it comes to safer cycling with a positive vision for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Allen, will you second the motion and either speak now or reserve your right to speak later in debate?
Thank you. Yes, I am happy to support the motion, and indeed I will speak now because time is running short on tonight's meeting. I agree with Councillor Fox. I think the Green Wheel needs to be expanded, and we need to encourage links between rural areas, our villages, and into the city. I believe Councillor Fox's motion is succinct and replete. I don't feel the task and finish group that has been intimated could add anything further to the matter other than delaying the feasibility study. And I support the motion and urge acceptance.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hogg, I understand that we'd like to move an amendment to the motion as set out in the additional information pack. Please, could you do so now?
Councillor Hogg, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's now 9:15 p.m. and in accordance with standing orders, there will be no further debate. A vote will be taken on the remaining items on the agenda without further discussion. All motions, amendments and recommendations will be deemed formally moved and seconded unless an indication is made now that the member no longer wishes to move their motions. Does anyone wish to no longer move their motions? Please raise your blue hand now. Councillor Sandford.
Yes, I would like to no longer move my motion on local plan.
Thank you, Councillor Sandford. Does anybody else wish to no longer move their motion? I'm not seeing any other hands. Okay, so Councillor Hogg, your amendment is deemed moved. I will move now to ask the head of Constitution. Oh, Councillor Hemraj, you've got your hand up.
I'd like to remove my motion, please.
Thank you, Councillor Hemraj. Your motion will not be moved. Is there anybody else?
We were going to vote for it, Sam, by the way. I think.
I'll keep it there then.
It will be moved then, Councillor Hemraj, then.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can be nice.
I'll then ask the head of Constitutional Services to read out the recommendations, and then we will go straight to the vote on each item. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. So I'll move straight to the vote on these. So the first vote that we'll be doing would be for the amendment to Councillor Fox's motion from Councillor Wiggin. So that's whether to accept the amendment from Councillor Wiggin as set out on the additional information pack. Dan, could you please open the vote? Again, if you have any issues, please raise your virtual hand.
I think that was Councillor Hogg, wasn't it?
No, it's Councillor.
It's definitely
Yes,
Councillor Hogg.
Apologies. Yes, it was Councillor Hogg. Good spot.
I think it was.
I thought it was.
Apologies, Councillor Hogg. Yes, so this is the amendment from Councillor Hogg to Councillor Fox's motion.
Can I ask if Councillor Fox accepts that amendment or not?
Well, the problem is, Leader, the fact is that to me it doesn't come under the terms of reference for the cycling and walking member working group. But you're the boss. You can confirm or deny that.
You're against it.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, we have a few more members to vote.
It won't let me submit mine, Pepper.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. So if you're not letting you submit, that's fine. We can take yours verbally. Which way would you like to vote, Councillor?
I'm against the amendment.
Against. Okay, so that in which case we have everyone. So Dan, can you shut the vote, please? So for we have 28, against we have 30, including Councillor Holditch's, and 0 abstaining. So that is defeated. Thank you. Okay, so next we move to Councillor Fox's motion as originally moved by Councillor Fox.
Agreed.
Can I just confirm then, do people want to move to the vote on that?
Yeah, let's have it done properly.
Yeah, okay, so we're going to the vote. Councillor Holditch, is it allowing you to vote this time?
Can't hear you, John.
It allows me to vote, but not to submit the vote.
Is it if you scroll down to the bottom, does it have a submit button?
It does, yeah. Now, press that about 6 times and nothing happens.
Okay, no, that's fine. We'll just leave it in that case then. So which way?
I'm voting for it.
For, okay. Thank you very much. So we've still got a few members left to vote for this one. Okay, that looks like it's everyone. Thank you, Dan. Can you shut the vote? Okay, so for we have 57 and against we have 1. So that is carried. Thank you, Dan. Okay. So the next motion is the motion from Councillor Ali in relation to trail hunting. To confirm, do members want to go to the vote on this one? If there's any objection, please could you raise your virtual hand now? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised, so in which case we can take, oh, no, we do have a hands raised. Okay, so we'll move to the vote. Dan, could you move to the vote, please? Councillor Hogg, can you let me know which way you'd like to, Councillor Holditch, sorry, could you let me know which way you'd like to vote if it's not working for you?
Could I ask the officers, my vote hasn't appeared on mine, it's Councillor Murphy.
Sorry, so nothing has popped up on your screen, is that what you're saying?
And nothing on mine either, Councillor Simons, nothing on mine either.
Okay. Right.
Did mine get recorded?
I don't know, we can't see. So did you not, can you not submit a vote, Councillor?
No, it's submitted that time.
Okay, that's fine. So Councillor Murphy and Councillor Simons, can you let me know which way you'd like to vote? Sorry, Councillor.
Yeah, Councillor Simons against.
Against. Okay, and Councillor Murphy, you're on mute, by the way.
In favour of the motion.
Okay, thank you very much. It looks like we might still have one person left to vote as well. So I'll just leave that open for a few more moments. Okay, looks like that's as far as we're going to get. Okay, Dan, can you close the vote, please? So we have 30 in favour, 26 against and 1 abstention. So that is carried. Thank you, members. Thank you, Dan. Okay, so we're moving now to the motion from Councillor Howard in relation to a city marathon. Is there any objection to this motion, please? You can raise your blue hand. Okay, I'm not seeing any objection, so I'll take that as agreed, Mr. Mayor. In which case we'll move to the next motion from Councillor Bisbee in relation to city cycle races. Again, is there any objection to this motion? Please raise your virtual hand. I'm not seeing any objection to that motion either, so I'll take that as agreed, Mr. Mayor. So we now move on to the motion from Councillor Yazin in relation to domestic violence. Again, members, is there any objection to this? If you could raise your virtual hand. No, there doesn't seem to be any objection to that. So again, I will take that as agreed, members. Thank you. And then on to the motion from Councillor Hemorrhage in relation to COVID testing. Is there any objection to this? Please raise your virtual hand. No, there's no objection, so that is agreed. And then we move on to then the motion from Councillor Fowler in relation to postal workers. Is there any objection to this? Please raise your virtual hand if you would like to go to the vote. Okay, yep, so there are people indicating, so we'll move to the vote. Dan, please. Thank you. And again, if you're having any issues, please raise your hand so I know to count you separately.
Pippa, my thing appeared on the screen, but then I just actually clicked on something, and it's sort of no longer on the screen. So.
That's fine. Okay, so which way would you like to vote, Councillor Sanford?
Which motion are we on? Sorry.
Councillor Fowler's motion in relation to
voting against it.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'm voting for Earl, my postie.
Councillor Shahid, are you okay? You've got your hands raised.
That's a leftover one from,
No.
Sorry.
Okay, no, that's fine. Councillor Rush, is your vote okay?
No, it won't allow me to vote.
Okay, no, that's fine. So which way would you like to vote, Councillor Rush?
For the motion.
For the motion, okay. And I think that's everyone we can get. So Dan, can you shut the vote, please? Okay, so we have 42 in favour, 10 against and 6 abstaining. So that is carried. Thank you, members. So we're now moving to the motion from Councillor Shaz Nawaz in relation to motions. Is there any objection to this one? Could you please raise your hand? No, that looks like there's no objection to that one. So members will take that as agreed. Thank you very much. So we're now moving to the motion from Councillor Casey in relation to culture, arts and theatre. Is there any objection to this one, members? If you could raise your virtual hand. No, again, that looks like that's all agreed, Mr. Mayor, so we'll take that as agreed. Councillor Sanford, you are no longer wishing to move your motion, so we'll skip that one. And we move to the motion from Councillor Hogg in relation to fireworks.
We were going to vote yes for that.
Would members like to go to the vote on this one? Could you raise your virtual hand if you'd like to go to the vote?
Vote, please, Pippa.
Yep, okay, that's fine. So Dan, can we please open the vote? Again, please raise your virtual hand if you're having any issues with the vote. I can take it separately. Okay, Councillor Bisbee, you're having issues. If you let me know which way you'd like to vote. You're on mute, Councillor Bisbee.
Yeah, for some reason I've put in one vote and it's jumped to the other one, and it won't change back. Don't know why that's happened. I'm just wondering whether it's done that on any of the other votes. But sorry, I'm voting against.
Against, okay. Thank you. Thank you. Right, it looks like we have everyone in that case. So Dan, could you close the vote, please? Right, so we have 33 for, 17 against and 7 abstaining, so that is carried. And then finally, members, we have the agenda item 14, the appointment of the Section 151 officer. Is there any objection to this recommendation? Please raise your virtual hand.
I'm tempted to say yes, but it's not really. It's no.
Yep, that's fine. That looks like there's no raised hands there, so we will take that as agreed. So, Mr. Mayor, that's all the votes completed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Before we go, I would like to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. See you all in 2021. That is the end of tonight's meeting.